Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to episode 30 of the Drew Pavlo Show. And this is a very powerful, very important day. We've reached 30 days of live streaming in a row. And because of that very special milestone, I would like to announce to everybody a very important change to the show. Now, until now, the show has been called the Drew Pavlo Show. But what I would like to announce to everybody is we are actually going to change the show's title from the Drew Pavlo Show to Drew's Fortress of Righteousness. And you may be asking why that is the case. Now, Friendly Geordie's tried to attack me on his show saying, Drew believes he lives in a fortress of righteousness. And we've actually been discussing this at the show. The team has come around and thought, and we all collectively think this is a great name, actually. This is a great title. Friendly Geordie's has given us an amazing gift here. The Fortress of Righteousness is such a funny term. And so I'm going to call the Drew Pavlo Show from this point onwards. We're going to call it the Fortress of Righteousness, Drew's Fortress of Righteousness. Now, thank you, everybody who's tuned in. Max Hooper, hello, mate. How you going? Max, how you going? Snazzy Scotsman. There he is. By the way, this is Joshua Dabbleseen. Hey, mate, how you going? Thanks for joining. Josh, I can even put you on later on the stream if you want to just randomly chat. I mean, this is kind of like a radio show, if you believe. If you understand, this is a radio show, and as I talk about here, eventually we're going to get a golden microphone. John Laws, the old radio announcer in Australia, he used to record himself with a golden microphone, and I'm just using a Rode Mini USB microphone. But eventually we're going to get a golden microphone. Even if it's something from Temu, it's a very funny concept to get a gold microphone. So imagine, I would like you guys to think of the Drew Pavlo Show from this point onwards. Please think of it as Drew's Fortress of Righteousness, and think of it as a kind of daily radio show. And I'll be bringing on guests. I'm happy to debate anybody, anytime. Hey, dog! Oh, sorry, guys. The dog is just doing some mischief. Please stop that. Please don't eat that, Belle. Thank you. Sorry, guys. The dog was trying to eat something that she really should not. Yeah, let's do it, man. Happy to jump on later. Let's get righteous. Amen. Maybe give it half an hour or so. Josh Dabbleseen, I can put you on maybe in half an hour or so. I want to just firstly, I've put the title Keir Starmer and migration. And so I want to talk a little bit about Keir Starmer and migration today. A lot of people are very upset. A lot of lefties are saying this is, Keir Starmer has become, a lot of lefties, Josh, a lot of lefties, a lot of Corbynites are saying, Keir Starmer has become a new Enoch Powell. And I think that is obviously insane hyperbole. It's very funny. I'll show you some of these memes. So we will go through today's news content. And I think it's very important what's happening in Britain right now. I think it may ultimately be repeated in Australia. And I think that's where we're heading. I'm not sure whether we can sustain the high rates of migration that we currently have in Australia. Give me 1 second, guys. The dog's being very silly. Hang on. Hey, please don't eat that. Please don't eat that. Hey, no, that's not for eating. That's your pee mat. Hey. That's your pee mat. Sit here. Hey, shh. Please, Belle. Gee, it's tough. Guys, she's just a puppy, so hey. Hey, just relax. Hey, you don't have to eat me. Give me 1 second, guys. The radio show has been paused by Belle, my beautiful little creature. Oh God, you ate my ear. Okay, I'm putting you down. Very, very cheeky. She's got she's just teething because she's a baby dog, if you can understand it. I'm very sorry, guys. As you can see, the Drew Pavlo radio show is perhaps not the most professional. It may not be the most professional radio show in the world right now, but we're slowly building. Please, Belle, please, stay, please. What type of dog is she? She's a Labradoodle. She's 6 months old. Her name is Belle. She's a beautiful creature, but she's teething right now, and she's very naughty. And sometimes she eats me, and sometimes she eats her own playthings, and she eats her pee mat. And she was trying to eat her pee mat before. I had to get off the stream to stop her very quickly. Please, Belle, we just need you to calm down a little bit. Is that okay? Okay. It's okay, guys. I think everything's going to be okay. Now, I think, Max, you are right. He was obviously smashing the council elections, and he had to do something. But it is certainly, an epical historical moment, I think. And I'm just, I've got so much to talk about when it comes to Keir Starmer and the migration policy, because it's something that the leftists are really upset about right now. But honestly, I think Keir Starmer is onto a winner. Um, Now, I am just going to quickly post the link, guys. I think we've got how many people are watching? We've got 13 live on YouTube and 177 on Twitter. That's pretty good. If you guys can help us share the stream, that would be really good. As always, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure and take care to smash the very important. Um, that's very important to help us reach more people. I'm just going to quickly post the link up. And if you guys have any comments, I'd be very interested what you're thinking about Keir Starmer and this supposedly right-wing shift on migration, even though I just think it's actually just common sense at this point. Watch live on YouTube. Just now, yes, back to the fortress of righteousness. I've just shared the link around. If you guys can help me, that would be great. Now, left need to embrace pragmatism. Reducing immigration to stop reform, the main issue is good. Absolutely. You just have to stop the far right coming to power, and so you do that by being pragmatic. Now, okay, let's go through some of the tweets today. So, Keir Starmer, he made a big speech, and he said, if you want to live in the UK, you should speak English. That's common sense. So we're raising English language requirements across every main immigration route. And there is just such an unhinged reaction. Who the hell is this guy? I'm unfollowing him. Maybe the UAE should do the same to the English that can't speak Arabic. Like, I literally don't care. Do the same to the British expats. No one cares. People just got really upset. And people are saying, oh, you can't out reform, but nobody really is a single issue voter when it comes to migration. There are a lot of people who want a social democratic Labour government, and they just don't want to have infinity migration, as this guy points out. And so it makes political sense to cater to these people. And I said, Starmer's hopefully on the right track with lowering migration. Mark this moment. If Albanese doesn't do this within the year, the government will reach a crisis point. I still think that's the case, even though he's won this massive landslide. It's very similar, I think, to Albanese winning this big landslide in Australia. But ultimately, the fundamentals, if you look at the fundamentals, there's a lot of unpopularity. I mean, just 3 months ago, Albanese was quite unpopular in Australia. And we've got a lot of economic pressure underneath the hood of the economy. And so I think, honestly, if Albo doesn't follow this, there's going to be trouble for the Labor government of Australia too. Josh, I'm not 100% if tonight's going to work. Let's touch base later, and if I'm free, then yeah, no worries, mate. I mean, I literally do it every day. I've been streaming every day for 30 days. So if we can't do it right now, we can always do it in a couple of days ahead. Very cute. Belle was just running in and out of the blinds. Very, very cheeky. G'day. Hey, Haya, how you going? I always appreciate your comments, Haya. Good morning from the East Coast. Cool. It's nighttime here in Australia, 8 p.m. and it's good. It's morning in America. Strangers at home will resonate. He was foolish. He was foolish. He promised to reduce numbers. I was watching James O'Brien on LBC today. His perspective should have lowered numbers and not make big promises. Good move. Takes immigration off the table as a single issue, voter issue. Encourage Labour's voters to take a look at the Yeah, exactly. You're just got to be pragmatic. You've just got to be pragmatic, literally, as Max is pointing out. Now, this was pretty funny. Hassan Piker got stopped at global entry, was asked for question. He was taken to questioning by American customs authorities. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when you're endorsing terrorist attacks every single day? I mean, has he potentially tried not endorsing listed terrorist organizations? This was funny. This, I think, is a really good example of the brain rot on the far left in Britain right now. So you've got these Guardian columnists, and they're like, the cheap foreign labor. This is how Keir Starmer denigrates the migrant carers looking after your loved ones. The government's claims about immigration driving down wages are so demonstrably untrue, it's hard to feel the appropriate level of outrage. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. I can't understand how a part of the left has worked itself up into such an ideological frenzy that they no longer believe that immigration dynamics have anything to do with they no longer think that housing has anything to do with supply and demand. They think that oh, the dog's doing a pee off camera. Come on. Oh, that's so silly. Come on. So frustrating. So frustrating. I'll have to clean that big wee up. But essentially, they have driven themselves up into a state of such ideological frenzy that they believe somehow that there is no such thing as pressure from. They just believe that immigration doesn't affect wages for domestic workers. How does that not apply? I mean, just apparently the laws of supply and demand no longer exist. They believe that immigration has no effect on housing. Again, they've just driven themselves up into such an ideological frenzy that they believe that immigration no longer exists. I mean, they believe that the normal, ordinary laws of supply and demand, as they apply to economics, just no longer exist for some reason when it comes to immigration, when it comes to wages. So yeah, very strange. I think a lot of us didn't believe they genuinely believed in globalism, but it turns out that it is a core belief. It is a core belief for them. And look, for me, I get a comment. What would you vote for in Britain? I would vote for Keir Starmer if he actually follows through with lowering migration. I appreciate the sort of blue Labour side to the party where they're talking about lowering migration so as to restore social cohesion to the country and to also put less economic pressure on the country. And so, listen, where I sit right now, ideologically and politically, I think I'm basically a blue Labour type, whether it's Australia, America, or the US. I support more social democratic policies when it comes to healthcare and education, but I'm not hardcore globalist. I don't believe in, and look, I support free trade to an extent, etc., but just not suicidal stuff, guys. Not suicidal stuff where you're literally abolishing border control, and then as a result, you have phenomena like the grooming gangs crisis in Britain, which was just horrific and literally thousands upon thousands of people victimized. And yeah, I wanted to respond to Malachi. I wanted to say this, right? Keir Starmer, Zelensky, Macron, Merz, and Tusk. I thought it was a very cool photo, Glory to Europe. And he goes, all of them want to import hundreds of millions of third worlders. And it's like, no, dude, not at all. Every single European leader in this photo wants to lower migration. Tell me a bit more about Blue Labour. Does it roughly align with the right unity over here? It would probably roughly align with Labour right in Australia, but they go a lot further in that Labour right in Australia will not right now say anything about migration, putting pressure on the housing market, and all that sort of stuff. Whereas Blue Labour in the UK is literally saying that high levels of migration are making the country a country of strangers. And look, that's what Keir Starmer said during his speech the other day, and people got so upset and they said, oh, he's channeling the ghost of Enoch Powell. And it's like, no, people just want to be able to recognize the towns and the homes. They just want to recognize the towns that they were brought up in. They just want to recognize the cities they were brought up in. They don't want to see huge, massive amounts of cultural change that leave people feeling a massive sense of dislocation. Now, what else? So this was really funny. Zara Sultana, she was part of the group of 7 Labour MPs that Keir Starmer withdrew the whip from. They basically were expelled from the Labour Party. And she's saying, the rivers of blood, Enoch Powell, this is so sickening. And it's just really unbelievably insane. Your favorite King of Corinth, I don't think of you as an utter mensch. I don't think of you as an utter mensch at all. Listen, just because I want to lower migration, it doesn't mean I have any problem against any individual migrant myself. My family are literally, my family literally migrated to Australia at one point. We're just talking about the volume here. The volume is what we're talking about. Is it wrong that I don't want non-Europeans in Europe? Look, I think, there should be scope for exceptional and talented individuals from anywhere in the world to be able to migrate. But we're talking about the volumes here. The volumes are just insane. And we can't sustain that in any English-speaking country. All these English-speaking countries are dealing with massive housing crises, massive strain on infrastructure. We have very similar economic crises right now. Cracking down on immigration from Starmer seems like more of a tactical decision to take the wind out of reforms. Yeah, but exactly, you have to do that. My whole strategy, right, is I don't like Trump. I don't like Nigel Farage. I don't like right-wing populists who are backed by the Kremlin, right? I don't like these people. So my thinking is, my thinking is, it's very simple. Just if the voters are sending a signal to you and the voters are saying lower migration, or we're going to vote for these insane people like Trump, then just lower migration, and then we won't get Trump. I get the volume, but this move has royally fucked me, lol. Let's hope there is a plan for exceptional India. I'm sure it doesn't fuck people who are already living there and are educated, right, King of Corinth? And I know that you're a student and you've educated yourself, so I don't think you should be in any trouble. I'm sure you're a good person. You're a talented person. And listen, there's going to be scope for individuals. There's going to be scope for individuals. We're not. I don't want any discrimination against anybody based on race, nationality, and stuff like that. We just are talking about the volumes of migration being too high, and we just want to say, listen, we want to lower migration and have it much more targeted so that we really do get exceptional and educated people, not the current system where, unfortunately, you're welcoming goat herders into some of these countries and they are immediately forming rape gangs. And it's a bad thing. It's a really bad thing. You're European. I think most Australians are okay with people like you. Listen, it's funny because the neo-Nazi guys in Australia still say that I'm not European enough. They say, oh, you're brown, blah, blah, we're going to deport you. Those guys are fucking idiots. Forget the neo-Nazis, forget the insane far-right people. We're moderate, sensible centrists here. We're talking about, we're being sensible. We're not listening to these insane, psycho, racist Nazis. It's to stop the right-wing nutjob conspiracy theories getting into government because major parties are ignoring issues. Voters want to see migration lowered, and they don't want to see, open borders, and therefore just lower migration so that you don't get Le Pen. You don't see the election of people like Le Pen, Trump. It's very simple, right? Ruben says hello. Hello, mate. How you going? 66% of Australian software engineers are born overseas. I think that's a totally disproportionate ratio. We need more construction workers, migrants, not IT. No, it's fucked over a lot of reasonable legal individuals. I agree with the volume, but don't downplay that it's messed up people's lives. Two things can be true. King of Corinth, what part in particular are you saying has fucked over individuals? Reform would probably shut down migration, then import a few million Afrikaners. Anyway, yeah, that's what the far right love. Drew, we need you in America. I'm broadcasting across the waves. Thank God for the age of the internet. I can broadcast to my American friends from Australia. Maybe one day I might, maybe one day I'll return to America for maybe a few months, check out the country. I'd love to see it for a couple months. One day I would like to live in America for a year or two, just see how things are. I've never lived overseas before. I think the longest I've ever been overseas at one time was maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So I'd love to one day, just spend a year overseas at some point. We'll see what happens in the future. But I'm ultimately somebody who really loves Australia, and I'd be really homesick, I think, if I were to ever leave the country permanently. Immigrant societies were losing their shit throughout yesterday in the UK, even people in skilled workers. Yeah, dude, but I think a lot of that is just panic and hysteria. I think you shouldn't be worried. There's going to be a lot of hysteria. You've got someone like, for example, Zara Sultana saying, oh my God, this is literally Enoch Powell. It's not Enoch Powell, guys. The problem is they let it go so badly out of control. Now they have to take drastic measures, unfortunately, because they took in 1 million people a year and Britain just could not sustain those numbers. And I think in per capita terms, Australia is actually even higher because we're taking about 550 to 600K net per year, and we've only got about 27 million people. Britain's, I think, 67 million, and they're taking in 1 million a year. So I think per capita, we would probably have a higher rate of migration. Changes to skilled workers visas, doubling the time to ILR. ILR application with a family of two costs about £20,000, and the UK government wants this for 10 years. So explain that a bit, Corinth, because I'm not sure how that works. Is it true that many international students in Australia do not know English, especially? Look, a sad thing is there has been really low standards on English language requirements when it comes to foreign students in Australia. And so there are a lot of international students who have basically been brought over and they're being used as cash cows by the universities, and they're actually being exploited, to be fair. And, a lot of these students is really sad. In a lot of cases, they have not even been able to properly study because they just effectively cannot engage with the content because of the language barrier. Fuck Sultana. I'm not saying it's evil. I'm saying it's required, but it's fucking up people's lives. Two things can be true. Okay, I understand what you mean. And look, I feel sympathy for individual people, but it's just, look, at the end of the day, Britain can't take in 1 million people a year. And it's just, this is, to me, man, it's really simple, right? Like, if they keep up the current if they were to keep up the current path, you're going to see a Prime Minister Nigel Farage. You're going to see and you're going to have people like Trump elected, and it's going to be infinitely worse, right? So we need to have we need to have management of this stuff rather than having open borders and then you get a massive crazy backlash from people like Trump and stuff like that. Drew, how does the healthcare system in Australia work? We've got universal public healthcare in Australia. It's pretty good. And honestly, it's a lot better healthcare system than America. So I just responded to this guy who's a massive, insane pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah guy. Philip Proudfoot is a massive pro-Hamas guy. Oh, blah, blah, blah. England's not helping enough people, blah, blah. I just said, learn English or leave the country. Because I hate this guy. He's a pro-Hezbollah guy anyway. I remember all his old tweets. And yeah, support Keir Starmer lowering immigration. You just don't want to see dozens of British towns becoming slums. And I've seen some of these slums in real life. It's not going well. So funny. All the people saying that, Keir Starmer is the new Enoch Powell. I mean, I said the same tweet a couple of times. I might delete that one, but I'm just pointing out, there's so many idiotic takes. And I'll repost on this stuff. England is a country for the English. If you want to move to England, you have to speak English. It's not up to the people of England to learn your language to speak to you as a migrant. Just so obvious, right? So obvious. I think there's been a lot of the backlash online, so much entitlement, so much like sort of racial animus towards white British people. And it's just like, it's just showing that the current system is not necessarily working when there's this level of like hatred and resentment and entitlement. Every 2 to 3 years, you have to reapply for ILR because you have no recourse to public funds. There's an ever-increasing immigration health surcharge. I mean, that's really brutal, man, but it's hard because the NHS is like basically collapsing in Britain. So one of the things I see people miss, most students have no recourse to public funds, pay council taxes, immigration health charges, NI tax. But the most popular argument is that most of leech of the system, as Europe is for Europe. Look, at the end of the day, you have to try and I still favor some level of diversity, maybe like 10-20% of the population I think is a good number, but at the end of the day, you don't want to completely radically change these countries. You don't want to revolutionarily change the full demographic structure of a country like England, which has 1,000 years of history, and France and all these different countries, right? I still favor migration. I still say, some level of migration is good and some level of cultural diversity is good, but I think, maybe at 10-20% of the population, not when you're seeing these numbers that are basically resulting in the wholesale revolutionary restructuring of the entire demographic structure of a country. It's like radical revolutionary demographic change that have not been seen in 1,000 years in a country. Like, it's just ridiculous. If you maintain the current trajectory in the UK or Australia, Farage will be the green left pick for government. That's the thing, guys. Like, on the current trajectory, and this is what I would say to, look, right, at the end of the day, my family are migrants. My family migrated in the 60s. And I say to people, right, on the current trajectory, Nigel Farage will look moderate. There's going to be fascists coming to power. And I don't want these guys to come into power. So you have to have sensible centrists who manage this system better, because otherwise, if you don't lower migration, I'm very worried that the extreme psycho right will come to power. And I don't want those people to come to power. Why would foreign students have access to that? Easy money, fee to see a doctor. They have this thing called bulk billing where, yeah, unfortunately, we do pay a nominal fee to see a doctor, probably $50-ish. It's annoying because we never had to use, in the past, we never had to pay that. We used to have free doctor visits. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we're losing the bulk billing system, and that's a real shame. There is a lot to improve. It's not perfect by any means. I'm not asking that foreign students should have access, Mr. F. I'm saying most people think they have access. No visa, no NHS. I understand King of Corinth, what he's saying there. And Mr. F says, thanks for the explanation. Yusuf says, good for Keir Starmer in trying to curb migration. Not that I call for all migration to be stopped, but migration, that's the thing as well, right? Like, again, I don't want zero migration. I still want some level of migration. I just want migrants to be culturally compatible, so that you can have social cohesion. And I want it to be at a volume that, one, you can have assimilation, and two, you don't have massive strain on infrastructure and housing. And I think that's very sensible. Now, going forward, this was a funny one. I want to watch this from last night. This made me really annoyed. Watch this. I think this was just
family migrating from an Islam.
This was like ridiculous sectarianism that we saw last night on the ABC Q&A show in Australia, which is our main current affair sort of talk panel discussion debate show. Watch this.
My family migrating from an Islamic country and turning a bit more into the non-religious kind of belief we're just thinking like in terms of our government, who can we look up to who like reflects our beliefs and our values in terms of policy?
David Shoebridge.
Yeah, well, Marcy, I think when you see the attacks against my colleague, Marine Faruqi, you see how hard it's been for
What a
Family
joke,
migrating
right?
from an Islamic
Like, why does the government not reflect my Islamic values? Like, come on, Australia is a secular country. We're not going to completely change the country for whoever came into the country last week. Like, watch this.
family migrating from an Islamic country and turning a bit more into the non-religious kind of belief. We're just thinking like in terms of our government, who can we look up to who like reflects our beliefs and our values in terms of policy?
David Shoebridge.
How about we will not have Islamic policy in Australia? How about we will not have Sharia law in Australia? How about we will not base the entire government structure of Australia off the whims of a 3% of the population that want a sectarian Islamist government? I'm sorry, like I want Australia to be a secular country. I want Australia to be an independent. I want Australia to not favor any religion over another. I want Australia to be secular in its outlook. And no, I'm sorry. If you come to Australia from an Islamic country, you're welcome if you're secular. If you want to have an Islamist sectarian government, I'm sorry, you have to leave. You just got to go back home. Just like facts. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Like, why are we going to have governments? Why should the government reflect the religious values of migrants who came last week? Australia was never an Islamic country. Australia was never an Islamic country. So I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. If you want to have, and look, I would be saying this as well. If it was a Jewish migrant saying, I want the government to be Jewish, if it was a Christian fundamentalist saying, I want the government to be Christian fundamentalist, I'm sorry. I do not believe in religious supremacy. I do not believe in a government by one religious minority or another. It's just fucking ridiculous. Like, just watch it again. I just can't believe it, right?
Family migrating from an Islamic country and turning a bit more into the non-religious kind of belief. We're just thinking like in terms of our government, who can we look up to who like reflects our beliefs and our values in
Like, I'm sorry, there's not going to be an Islamic government in Australia. I'm sorry, there's not going to be an Islamic government in Australia. You're welcome to come here if you're secular and you want to work hard and respect the laws of the country. But if you want to have an Islamic sectarian government in Australia and you want the government of Australia to reflect your religious Islamic values, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Like, Australia has a history, 250 years, and it was not founded as an Islamic country in modern times. It's very much a secular country. I don't want the culture of my country changed. I want the country to remain a secular country. And sorry, I just think if you come to Australia wanting the government to be an Islamic government, I'm sorry, you're not welcome. I'm absolutely happy for Muslims to migrate to Australia if they are secular and they respect the existing culture and laws of the country. But if a Muslim person wants to have an Islamic government in Australia, like this guy on Q&A who's saying Islamic voices silence an Australian government, this guy's literally asking for Islamic voices to be represented in Australian government. I'm sorry, the Australian government is not going to be there for Islamic voices. The Australian government does not exist to give representation to Islamic voices. It does not exist to give representation to any one religion over another. It's supposed to be a sectarian government. And I'm just sorry. It's just, you're not welcome if you want a theocracy. If you want a theocracy and if you want a religious government, then I'm sorry. Just not welcome. Not welcome. As I said, absolutely no problems with Muslims. I just want people to be secular. And if somebody wants to have an actual religious government, and I'm sorry, it's just not going to work in Australia. It's just literally not going to work. And I agree with Yusuf. Australia will never be a theocracy. Are you against certain viewpoints? Liberal democracy is defended by those who let any viewpoint talk. I hate these people who are so fucking stupid. They think that if you're a liberal, you have to support your own national suicide. No, I'm sorry. I'm a liberal, but I still believe in nation states. I still believe in preserving the overall culture of my country, which is a liberal democratic culture. And I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. Like, being a liberal Democrat, nowhere does that imply that I have to endorse a fucking Islamist government. And yeah, Q-Core is some fucking seething Islamist jihadist going, oh, you're an obese Turkish rape baby. Fuck you, Q-Core. I'm so sorry, bro, but you're never going to get your fucking retarded jihadist government in Australia. I'm so sorry. Where do you live, Q-Core? Where do you live? Where do you live? And this person blocked me, but yeah, seriously, if you hate the country you migrate, great. If you hate the country you migrate to, again, you have to go home. To think we went from Corbyn to this, beautiful, very happy. So Q Cool lives in Germany. Fuck off, cheek. I actually hope you get deported. I hope you get deported. If you live in Germany and you want a theocratic Islamist government, deportation. Sorry. And yeah, why does the Corbynite far left hate themselves, hate their own country, hate winning? It's just a common factor for some reason on the left. This was an act of war on a NATO ally by Russia. Russia was behind the arson sabotage of the Marywilska shopping mall in Warsaw. Oh, he doesn't live in Germany. I'm memeing, lol. Okay, that's pretty funny. Yeah, look, I think that's literally the most fundamental, right? If you hate the country you migrate to, go home. And I'm actually going to tweet that right now. That's a great tweet. If you hate the country you migrate to, just facts. Would you support amending the speech laws for special laws against migrants? I think that free speech does not extend to endorsing terrorist groups. And if you're a migrant to Australia and you're endorsing a terrorist group, I'm sorry, but you're going home. Does Jeremy Corbyn still have his own show on Russia Today? I don't think he has a show anymore. This is a funny one by Idris. Blah, blah, blah. Shakespeare wrote a very nice piece of writing about the importance of immigration. Therefore, Pakistani grooming gangs should be welcome in Britain. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. This was pretty funny. Robin, I used to be friends with him years ago because we had the same anti-Assad viewpoint. And unfortunately, he's one of the people who lost their minds after October 7, became an Islamist sectarian. And he was saying, oh, wow, Starmer is the British Biden, the liberal centre, facilitating the collapse into fascism. And apparently fascism is when you ask that people speak English, if they're migrating to an English-speaking country. Apparently that's fascist. Corbynites should be deported to North Korea. Well said. Free speech is something you dislike, saying something free speech is someone you dislike, saying something you hate. As long as it's not threatening directly, though. Free speech shouldn't and doesn't extend to the guests of a nation. That's reasonably clear. As Shakespeare once said, we need 1 trillion Pakistani. Yes, well said. I remember when he wrote that. That was a famous line, I believe, in Hamlet. Yes, it's always been part of British culture, right? But yeah, look, I believe in free speech, but I believe also in the paradox of tolerance. And it's very simple, right? The paradox of tolerance says that if you want to have a tolerant liberal society, you cannot extend tolerance to those who want to use tolerance to destroy democracy, right? And so I always say there's 3 groups: jihadists, fascists, communists, where you cannot extend any sympathy whatsoever. You cannot extend the slightest inch to jihadists, fascists, communists, because they will use your tolerance against you to destroy democracy. Wait, what was that Mirror of Kiev post? Looked funny. Where is that actually? Let me find it. Was it up? Just basically saying Phidias should die. And maybe in Minecraft, yes. I think drone strike Phidias in Minecraft. I fucking hate Phidias. Watch this.
I'm a member of the European Parliament.
Hello, everyone. I am a member of the European Parliament. My name is Phidias.
Member of the European Parliament, and I'm here in Russia. I was not here to attend the big military parade, but I'm here because I want to focus my visit on something different. My position on the war in Ukraine has always been very clear. The EU should not focus on sending as many weapons as possible to Ukraine army, because this is obvious that this cannot be something that will put an end to this war.
I fucking hate Phidias, dude. Drone strike Phidias. Fucking hate Phidias. Drew Power has not once given an actual argument. What's your even argument? Fuck Phidias, yeah. I'd argue fascist and jihad is pretty much identical in political and social politics. Yeah, the funny thing is, I think that every single culture is capable of creating its own variant of fascism. And I think jihadism is just the Islamic world's variant of fascism. It's just, if you think of fascism as like a right-wing, a far-right reactionary backlash to modernity, then that's literally just what jihadism is, right? That's your cousin. Why insult his accent? Phidias is not my cousin. Fuck Phidias. Drone strike Phidias. But he did go to the parade. He literally went to the parade. Fuck Phidias, dude. Why would we support this kind of government that is almost always civil war when the supreme leader goes down like an Ottoman? Hang on 1 second, guys. The dog is eating something. Hey, Belle. Drop. Cheeky Dumbo. I got chat. Oh shit, sorry. Oh, no, oh, fuck, I thought it was the bathroom. Oh, sorry. Wrong door. Sorry guys, 1 second. The dog just did a pee. I've got to clean it up. This is fucked up. It's very hard looking after a little dog. Yuck. Ugh. Yuck, Belle. Shouldn't have done this. I'm sorry, everyone. Very sorry. Not to do the Hassan Piker empty chair thing, but unfortunately the dog was chewing on a nail. And I had to stop that because I didn't want the beautiful dog to choke. I'm really sorry to do the chair stream, everyone. I had to take a minute because the dog peed everywhere and started eating on a nail. And I had to stop it. I didn't want it to choke. But holy shit, dude, I fucking hate Phidias, right? It's wild that this guy's only 25, but looks like he's 50 years old. It's like Kremlin money is all cursed with the side effect of aging you faster or something. What is his ideology? You don't understand fascism or Islamism in there. Dude, I know Q-Core is 100,000% an Islamist. Do you support Trump's deportation of students? No, the way Trump's doing it is wrong. If somebody has explicitly expressed support for a terrorist group, then yes, they should be deported. But he's very clearly just rounding up anyone randomly, right? Chair stream. Be YouTuber, get elected, immediately shill for Russia. Designate as an enemy combatant. Yup. Bell for Prime Minister. Well said. Drop the Discord. I'll post the Discord in the links, guys. He's 25. Yeah, dude, he's younger than me. Can you guys imagine that Phidias is younger than me? What the fuck's going on? Look at this cunt's head. What the fuck's going on, guys? I'm younger than... No, wait, hang on. Guys. Okay, what the fuck's going on? Phidias is younger than me. I'm 1 year older than Phidias. Look at this cunt. We're both Greek Cypriots. I'm 1 year older than this man. I'm 1 year older than him. Look at this cunt. Look at his head. He looks like he's 50. And the way he speaks. Hello, I'm Phidias, member of the European Parliament. I let Putin fuck me in the ass. Like, just the worst accent in the world. Can barely speak English. It's so funny. In his old YouTube videos, he has a normal accent. And then just as soon as he became a MEP, he just regressed for some reason. He just starts talking like, I'm Phidias. I let Putin fuck me in the ass. Just, oh my God, dude. I fucking hate Phidias. Drew, why do you gatekeep your Discord so much? I actually don't at all. I'm going to post the link right now. It's just because, unfortunately, fortunately, we get raided by like psychotic fascists and jihadists and commies as well. But I will post the link right now. Hang on, where's the invite link? I'll put it in the comments, guys. Okay, I'm going to put it in the comments. Okay, there's the comments, guys. My name is Fidias, member of the European Parliament. They fuck me in the ass in Russia every day. Every day I suck Putin's cock. They pay me to shill for them in the European Parliament.
Something different. I am a member of the European Parliament.
Guys, I'm older than Fidias. Can you imagine? I'm 1 year older than this cunt. I'm 1 year older than him, and he looks like he's fucking 70 years old. What the fuck, man? It's actually mental. Fidias mistakenly sprinkled some of his polonium stash in his organic muesli. Well said. Pavlu thinking of gay rape because of his Turkish gene memory. That's a pretty funny comment, actually, even though I fucking hate you. I'm a member of the European Parliament. Putin sucks. I suck Putin's cock. That's Fidias for you.
I'm a member of the European Parliament.
European Parliament, Fidias. I'm Fidias. Putin. I like sucking Vladimir's cock in the European Parliament. I get paid by Russia to shill for him in the European Parliament. Fucking speaks like Borat, looks like Borat, cunt's 50 years old, and he's younger than me, and he looks like his fucking Borat. It's a fucking disaster. And you know what? I can be racist to Fidias because we're actually the same ethnicity. We're both Greek Cypriots, so I'm going to be racist to him.
In Russia, I was not here
to attend the big rally, even though I actually went to the rally and got fucking fucked up the ass by Russia at the rally. I actually will make fun of his accent. We're both Greek Cypriots, so I actually can be racist to him. Dude, everyone in Cyprus speaks English, so it's I don't know what the fuck his problem is. Everyone else, I've been to Cyprus and everyone speaks English pretty well, and people have normal accents. Who the fuck knows what happened to Fidias? He's just a fucking retard, dude. I can actually be as racist to Fidias as I want because we're literally the same ethnicity. So this is so good. I love bullying Fidias. It's so fun to bully Fidias because I actually get a full pass. I get a full pass to say anything I like about him because we're both Greek Cypriots.
Who lost their lives.
The European Parliament. Now we are commemorating the 80th anniversary.
The moral compass of Europe is broken because we are not sucking Vladimir Putin's cock.
Of the EU.
Of the EU is broken because my name is Fidias. I represent Cyprus at the European Parliament, and Russia pays me to get fucked up the ass every day and speak for their message in the European Parliament.
EU is completely broken. Since
2022,
the EU has sent 138 billion
billion
in military and humanitarian aid. We have cut diplomatic ties with Russia and imposed the biggest amount of sanctions.
The biggest amount of sanctions. Drew, what do you think of Australia Day? I support Australia Day. I fully support Australia Day. And do it on January 26th. Don't let the communists try and dismantle the nation state of Australia. Unfortunately, what it has become, it started off being a change the date movement. And now it's literally, at these rallies, they literally have signs like abolish Australia. So that's why I'm completely against it. Max is upset because he likes Fidias. He's going, move on, bro. It's boring. Dude, you like Russia, Max. Just admit it. I don't even know why. Cypriots speak English better. Yeah, dude, Cypriots speak good English. So what the fuck's this excuse? Who even fucking knows? Does anyone know why Fidias speaks with a fucking Borat accent? Does anyone know why? Because if you look at his old videos on YouTube, he doesn't speak with a fucking Borat accent. So no one knows why. What the fuck's going on here? My name's Fidias, the European Parliament. Yeah, my dog speaks better English than Fidias. Literally. My dog literally speaks better than Fidias. It's while nobody has investigated him yet, it would probably take 5 seconds to find the Russian funding. It's very sad, bro. I'm literally from Cyprus and, you know, my family background's Cypriot and Russia uses Cyprus for money laundering. So there's a lot of corruption there. It's very sad. Use Drew Pavlu's head as a fleshlight groiper. Fuck off, I'm blocking you. Disgusting cunt. Fuck you. Is it James Cook in Australia? Can you make it if you're in Parliament? There's no James Cook Day in Australia. I thought you were Afro-Turk. Yes, I am actually Afro-Turk. That's my background. Drew, will you be having Tracing Woodgrains on today? Tracing Woodgrains definitely on this week. I'm not sure when they're going to do it. My email, hang on. Guys, I got invited to go to Israel by Brianna Wu. Should I do it? I've never gone before. My problem is this, right? If I go to Israel, then for infinity, for the rest of my life, they get to go, oh my God, bro, the Zionists paid Drew. But I would like to see it. I mean, I've never gone there before. I mean, I literally opposed Hamas from day one, never thinking, oh, like I'd get a fucking visit to Israel out of it. Should I go? Should I do it? I don't know. Let me know. I mean, I would like to see Israel, but I know if I go there, people for the rest of my life, they're going to be like, oh, Drew, he's been paid by the fucking Zionists, blah, 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 blah. It'll be so fucking annoying. It's like how the communists every single day, they bring up, oh my God, Simon Fenwick gave fucking $10 to Drew in 2022. Like, who gives a fuck, man? But that's what would happen if I went to Israel. Destiny went to Israel too. Well said, well said. Yes, take your free Israel trip. Well, the chat's saying I have to take it, then I've got no choice. Hey, your credibility will be over if you do. But these people already hate, dude, all the people who would hate me if I went to Israel already fucking hate me, right? Seriously. Probably don't do the photo shoot bit. No, if I go to Israel, I'm doing a photo shoot at the Western Wall, 100%. I'm gonna go full Zionist. I'll put the hat on. I'll do the photo shoot at the Western Wall and just make it so that the far right will get really fucking annoyed and use those photos against me forever. Yeah, I've got this comment. Your credibility will be over if you do go to Israel. But the thing is, anyone who would hate me for going to Israel, anyone who would hate me for going to Israel already hates me. Like, who's like the one person who supports me right now and is like, oh, I supported Drew until he went to Israel. Like, I can't think of a single person, right? I don't think you're avoiding Zionist funding accusations either way. Dude, they already, like, as of right now, this very second, I've never got a cent for anything I've said about Israel ever, right? And I still get people going, oh my God, Mossad is dropping gold bar parachutes into fucking Drew's backyard. I still get that anyway, right? So why not just fucking go to Israel? Those people will always find a way to hate you. Go to Jerusalem, but don't let Mossad take you to Epstein's Island. They'll own you forever, bro. Max, do you actually think that's real? Do you actually think that's real, dude? They'll put you in the secret Zionist brainwashing room. They'll put me in the secret Zionist brainwashing room. No. Oh my God. Max Huber actually thinks that if I go to Israel, they'll put me on Epstein's Island and they'll own me forever. You should collab with a member of Arab Party in Israel. That would actually be interesting. If I went to Israel, I'd actually like to go to the West Bank and actually interview people. That's literally what I would like to do. Do a photo shoot in Gaza Strip. No, I'm not going to Gaza. That's fucked up. I think the war is horrible. Only people complaining about Israel funding are jihadists and groypers. You don't want them. Yeah, literally facts. Literally facts. Anyone who go there on your own steam, fuck being in those cunts' pockets. Like, but Max, like everybody already goes, Drew's paid by Zionists. Everybody already says that. So if I actually went to Israel, like, who cares? Like, the same people who've already thought that I've been fucking owned by the Zionists for 2 years, the same people say the same thing as always. Go to the Gaza border or see the orchids in West Bank. Please, if you're from Israel, donate some shekels for now. Let's have some shekels. Guys, if we've got anyone in the chat from Israel, Drew, did you see the NSN documentary dropping on Thursday? What NSN documentary? Come on, man, don't you understand humor? Okay, Max, you're joking. I understand. Great job for naming the stream Drew's Fortress of Righteousness. Yeah, guys, so I want to explain this to anybody who's just tuned in. Until now, I've done 30 live streams in 30 days, and until now, I called it the Drew Pavlu Show. Now we're going to call it Drew's Fortress of Righteousness, because that's what Friendly Geordies used to attack me. And I thought it'd be very funny to call it the Drew's Fortress of Righteousness. They'll turn into Sherry Markson. I like Sherry Markson. She's nice to me. She did stories about me when I was getting expelled from the University of Queensland. She helped me, so I appreciate it. Oh, APAC, Qatar, hard as fuck. Drew, your DMs aren't open. My DMs on Twitter actually are open. I don't know what you're talking about.
In history, a quite clear and powerful response.
I fucking hate Phidias, dude. This is pretty funny. Like Ibrahim Traore, like sucking up to Putin. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso, half of Burkina Faso has fallen to like insane ISIS. Yup, simply deport. Deport. That's a great example of a deportation candidate. Being as ethnic as you are and saying this is crazy, Drew, face it. Without lax immigration policies, there's no way you'd have ended up in Australia. Nobody likes a ladder pulling brown sucker. I'm pulling the ladder up behind me. Fuck off, Unity. Communist, tanky, retarded person. I hope you get deported from fucking America. Oh, this is so funny. John McGowan on Susan Lay. I just experienced an emanation, a sharp blinding light, and it sounded like an owl trying to speak Latin. Susan Lay has won the leadership. Fucking amazing. I love it. So many funny memes from this. It says I have to be verified to message you. Ah, shit. I don't know how to fix that. Is that just a Twitter thing? I don't know how to fix that. Starmer's Britain. It's Enoch Powell. Fellow half ladder puller here. Yep, we're pulling the ladder up behind us. What are you going to do about it? Oh no, Keir Starmer is another Enoch Powell. These guys are so hysterical, guys. So fucking hysterical. This is pretty funny. Angus Taylor he went to the wrong door.
Ticket there. Big moment for her. And Angus Taylor.
Who is Enoch Powell? Enoch Powell was like a conservative figure who broke from the Tory party because he wanted an end to immigration. And he's basically been the boogeyman of the British intelligentsia for the past 50 years because of it. Suzanne Lay's press conference actually wasn't bad. Yes, she's inexperienced, but it'll be, nah, dude, she's got no hope. She's got no hope at all. Really funny fact about Suzanne Lay. Actually, amazing fact about her. So she changed her name to Susan with 2 S's. She changed her name from Susan to Susan with 2 S's because she believes in like numerology or something like that. Like, holy shit, dude. Holy shit. He like how can you even that in itself should be disqualifying. Do you support Labor in the UK pausing trans treatment for those under 18? Listen, it's such a irreversible surgery. If you're under the age of 18, you shouldn't do it because if you change your mind, you've got no hope of ever changing back. Drew, have you ever watched Powell's speeches? As much as I hate to admit it, he was somewhat... Maybe I should put them on the YouTube stream. I mean, what Summer says makes sense, but I just don't trust him to deliver on lowering migration. If he tried to, he would fuck it up somehow. He does have shit political instincts. Yeah, dude. So, she's literally, it's literally numerology. So she changed her name from Susan with 1 S to 2. She changed her name from Susan to Suzanne with 2 S's. And literally did that because she believes in numerology, like a fortune teller told her to. What the actual fuck? How the fuck is this woman the leader of the centre-right party in Australia? Like, it's fucking over. It's so fucking over. Actually, you know who I should have on the stream? I should have Barclay on the stream sometime. We can have a debate. I'll actually bring him on. I'll actually make a note to myself to bring Barclay onto one of the streams this week. So you don't support puberty blockers, Drew? No, dude. It's too dangerous. There are people who've tried to change their minds, and it unfortunately is irreversible. Play Powell's speech. Best to see the source, but judge by what other people say about it. You should know that it's Powell. Let's watch it. Let's watch it. I'm not endorsing it, but we'll just watch it. Now, he's a very interesting figure. People don't know this, but Enoch Powell was one of the youngest men to ever be appointed a professor in the Commonwealth. And he was a professor at the University of Sydney prior to World War II. And I believe he actually taught Gough Whitlam, the famous Gough Whitlam. He taught classics at the University of Sydney. And because he was a trained classicist, he included a reference in his speech to rivers of blood. And that was a quote from ancient Roman sources about the river Tiber overflowing with much blood. We'll watch into it. We'll watch it. Again, I'm not actually endorsing it, but it's important to see these things from the source. And look, he was an interesting intellectual figure. Obviously, I don't endorse everything.
This country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
It's a speech which, 50 years on, still rears its head.
Hang on, this is a commentary of it. Let's get the actual speech.
country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. Well, I can already hear the chorus of execration. How dare I say such a horrible thing? How dare I stir up trouble and inflame feelings by repeating such a conversation? My answer is that I do not have the right not to do so. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad, literally mad as a nation, to be permitted the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents who are, for the most part, the material of the future growth of the immigrant-descended population. It is like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral pyre.
Much of Powell's speech was not recorded. The following extract is read by an actor.
They found their wives unable to obtain hospital beds in childbirth, their children unable to obtain school places, their homes and neighborhoods changed beyond recognition. They began to hear, as time went by, more and more voices which told them that they were now the unwanted.
It almost passes belief that at this moment, 20 to 30 additional immigrant children are arriving from overseas in Wolverhampton alone every week. And
it's kind of crazy, yeah. Like he was talking about 50,000, and it's now like 500,000 a year.
that means 15 or 20 additional families, a decade or so.
And again, let me clarify: disavowing, fully disavowing, not endorsing. We're watching this for historical purposes because everyone's going, "Oh, Keir Starmer's the new Enoch Powell." I'm just watching it for historical purposes. We disavow, okay? Oh, he said, wait, did he say 50,000 a week? Okay, obviously that's like obviously that's a massive exaggeration.
She is becoming afraid to go out. Windows are... And
there was a famous part of the speech, which it's going to get into now, where he referenced a white constituent, an elderly woman who said that she was afraid to go out on the go out on the street, I think it was. So this is what's going to...
Broken. She finds excreta pushed through her letterbox. When she goes to the shops, she is followed by children. Charming, wide grinning, pickaninnies.
That was a part of the speech that really received massive amounts of condemnation, the use of the slur pickaninnies and the wide grinning thing. So listen, he obviously used a lot of racially charged language in this speech. He wasn't just talking about, cultural cohesion. He wasn't just talking about, cultural assimilation and stuff like that. He was literally explicitly talking about race. And that's the part, obviously, that I disagree with.
Here is their means of showing that the immigrant communities can organize to consolidate their members, to agitate and campaign against their fellow citizens, and to overawe and dominate the rest. The discrimination and the deprivation, the sense of alarm.
So funny. There's this Islamist guy going, "Pavel, you aren't white." Like, dude, look at me. Like when I was protesting against the CCP, the left loved to go, "Oh, this guy's a white nationalist." But apparently I've now become a Afro-Turk, which is very funny. Of course, I am Afro-Turkish, and I should be allowed to use any words when I'm rapping along to my favorite songs in the car, but we'll keep on going.
In terms of our government.
Yeah, I'm clearly black. I'm clearly black. I'm clearly descended from an Afro-Turkish background. I should be allowed to say whatever I want, right? Thoughts?
And of resentment lie not with the immigrant population, but with those among whom they have come and are still coming. This is why to enact legislation of the kind before Parliament at this moment is to risk throwing a match onto gunpowder. In these circumstances, nothing will suffice but that the total inflow for settlement should be reduced at once to negligible proportions, and that the necessary legislative and administrative measures should be taken with.
Look of Arthur Colwell. No, but Arthur Colwell was obviously infamously a massive proponent of white Australia, didn't want a single non-white person in the country, which is obviously cooked.
Without delay.
He was unfortunately correct that Britain was going to have sectarian politics, unfortunately.
Powell ended his speech with a line from the Roman poet Virgil, which summed up his deep sense of anxiety. It is one of the most misquoted lines in British political history.
As I look ahead, I am filled with foreboding. Like the Roman, I seem to see the river Tiber foaming with much blood. I am filled with foreboding.
That's
Like
the
the
famous
Roman,
Rivers of Blood quote.
I seem to see the river Tiber foaming with much blood.
Inflames people to look at realities instead of.
Let's watch this. Let's watch this debate between.
I was saying
It was Jonathan Miller and Enoch Powell debating issues about UK immigration. What year was this? 1971.
to Mr. Powell, it was said, for example, that you became the hero of the skinheads who.
It was quite funny that the skinheads took Enoch Powell as their sort of champion. And apparently there were, chants in favor of Enoch Powell at like the Millwall Stadium and stuff like that, which is like insane because he was a very elitist patrician type figure. He was one of the youngest men to ever be appointed as a professor in the Commonwealth. He was a professor of the classics. And so it's quite strange that, the skinheads of Millwall were like chanting his name. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting. We'll watch the debate.
I became the hero of 90% of the people of this country for having said what they were waiting for somebody to say, for identifying a danger of which they were conscious but couldn't believe that nobody would see it or point it out. And I still am.
And you still are. But I mean, there was a certain amount, you will admit, of reaction. The hero of the skinheads was a phrase used in an article.
No, there was no violent
as
reaction.
if we've seen them reported in America as these kids with their hair shaved down who go out and occasionally beat up Pakistani people.
And that happened before my speech as well, and has not happened more since than before.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Nor was there any act of violence associated with that speech, and the one which was alleged was investigated by the police and found to be a false report. What there was, as I say, was a tremendous explosion of emotion, indeed, that at last something which threatened this country, which people had been watching coming, was recognized, was talked about. That's what happened. And since then, at least we've been able to talk about it. At least we've discussed. At least we've been able gradually to elicit some of the facts. Do you know the very facts of?
Hello, Ryan. Thanks for joining us, mate. We're just discussing basically Keir Starmer and British migration, and the leftists have been very upset and likening Keir Starmer to Enoch Powell. So we're watching some of the old Enoch Powell speeches. And again, I disavow Powell, but we're just watching it for historical purposes. I've got the dog here. She was going crazy, but if you need to be mindful of slip, slop, slap, then you are a verified white. No, as we all know, look at me. Just look at me. I'm black. Come on, guys. I'm black. As the far right Nazis like to remind me, look at me. I'm not white. I'm Afro-Turkish. To be honest, I don't think he's a Nazi. More so, an individual who has identified that the West's approach to immigration is a high-stakes experiment. The problem is that people are stupid. Yes, Enoch Powell was not a Nazi. I think the problem is that he used racially charged language and slurs. Obviously, I really wish he had not done that. When it comes to the question of sectarian politics in Britain, unfortunately, he may have been right about that. Because unfortunately, I think British politics has become very sectarian with people voting according to ethnic racial blocks and stuff like that. And that's not good. That's not good. That's not good in a democracy. Hey, the doggy. Come on, doggy. Stop. Typical liberal cuck. No, he's not a cuck. He's not a cuck. Put Oswald Mosley on. No, fuck Oswald Mosley. I fully support Winston Churchill putting Oswald Mosley in a prison during World War II. Pablo has never won a debate once. I've won many debates all the time. Is this all he said that made people call him a Nazi? Yeah, this is basically all he ever said that made people call him a Nazi, which is pretty crazy, to be honest. It is pretty crazy. Like, he's not a Nazi, right? Be quiet. A black woman is speaking. Facts. Very, very true. Honorary POC. Guys, I'm a person of color. Look at me. I am a person of color. I should be allowed to say, I should be allowed to rap along to Kendrick songs with any word I like. Belle, please. So much chewing. Look, if you guys want to think Jesus was brown or black, that's fine. Jesus was Levantine. The funny thing is, Jesus actually would have been roughly the same tone as me, kind of like olive tone, because he was like Levantine. He was, Belle, stop. Jesus was Levantine, you know, it's, you know, the Levant, Cyprus, Israel, Lebanon, the Palestinians, like that's Levantine, right? Syrian a bit. Wait, what about the Mexican president's husband? There have been plenty of left-leaning people who are pretty anti-immigration, like Bernie Sanders claims that open border is a coke scheme to get cheap. And look, I think Bernie Sanders is right that it is a coke scheme to, you know, to get cheap labor. Fact checked by real Afro-Turkish patriots. Fact check true. The Drew Pavlou Fortress of Righteousness podcast live stream experience is sponsored by the Afro-Turkish patriots of the world. Hey, Belle. Oh, so bitey. Yes, Massa Drew. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Gee, 38 people watching live. That's great, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, guys, smash the motherfucking like button. Smash the motherfucking like button. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the motherfucking like button. Hit the comments. Spam that shit. Share the stream with your friends. Share the stream on a Discord you're in. Share the stream on a Reddit. Just share it everywhere, right? Share it on Twitter. We've got to reach more people. 41 people watching live now. Amazing. Amazing stuff, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, like and comment. And if you're just tuning in, the Drew Pavlou Show has been renamed. We're calling it Drew's Fortress of Righteousness, and this is episode 30. We've done 30 live streams in 30 days, and the reason I'm renaming it the Fortress of Righteousness is because Friendly Geordies said that I like to inhabit a fortress of righteousness, and he used that to attack me, and I thought it was very funny. Drew, I'm eternally cringing at how much you let your dog get away with. She's just a little creature, though. She's so small, and I love her so much. Hey, don't bite. She's just teething. She's teething at the moment. And because she's teething, you know, you've got to be a little bit understanding. No biting, though, please. Turkish dog. Yeah, my dog is Turkish. That's very true. Jesus Jesus wasn't Palestinian. Jesus was Jewish. But he was like a Levantine figure. Like he was Levantine. So the Levantines include the Cypriots, the Lebanese. It's like the Eastern Mediterranean, right? And Levantines can range from peach and cream to light brown. Yeah, look, it's funny. My dad and my brother have a much darker skin tone than I do. And my brother used to say that I looked like a vampire because I was so pale. Because I mean, he would play football outside all the time. Whereas I do kind of stay indoors a bit more. I like YouTube. I like writing. Oh, Belle, hey. But look, at the end of the day, Drew is a person of color. And that's just very true. The Hamas belt. 49 people watching live. This is crazy, guys. Amazing stuff. Please keep sharing it around, like and comment, help me reach more people. You're teaching it that it's fun to bite you for fuck's sake. No, I'm not trying to. Okay, Belle, I'm putting the dog down. I'm putting the dog down. Pavlou, let's do an entire debate on the roots of what you call Islamofascism. Sure, but what's your name? I don't even know who you are. I'm not debating some random anon with fucking 3 followers. Yeah, I don't know why Labor is for immigration. I thought they were for the worker. That's counter to their core goals, isn't it? Wages would rise if there was less immigration. Drew, I'm Palestinian, but I'm sadly pale as fuck. Dude, look at Richard Hanania. This is such a funny thing. Richard Hanania is literally Palestinian, and he looks really pale. There are actually some Palestinians who look really pale. Likewise, there are some Israelis who look really pale. And just by the same virtue, you know, there are Palestinians who are quite darker in tone, same with Israelis. So the Levantines can be very... It can change a lot. And the funny thing is, if I were to be like, if I was working out in the fields, I'd probably have a much darker skin tone. I do like bronze up a bit when I tan and stuff like that, but I just mainly work indoors, you know, so I'm a bit of a nerd. How do you solve this problem of sectarianism in the UK? Putting deportations aside, the reality is that there are second-gen families born in the UK but still aren't integrated. It's multi-generational. This is a big problem. This is a big problem. And look, anybody who's committed a crime or holds to extremist ideology, even if they're second generation, they have to be deported. That's my view. That's my view. Gifted by Geordie. Yes, Geordie's gifted us the new name of the show. If more people are employed, it would help the economy. Maybe the Cokes have a point. Yeah, but dude, like, there comes a point where it's a race to the bottom on wages. Good evening, everyone. I think Starmer is getting a lot of his stuff from the Social Democrats from Denmark, especially immigration policy. Good for him. That's the way to go for the Social Democrats. That's the way to go for the centre-left. You have to go that way. Otherwise, the far right are going to come to power. We don't want them to come to power. So it's very simple, guys. You just have to be sensible. You have to be a centrist, and you have to say, listen, people don't want infinity migration, so we're going to have to lower migration. Drew, what ethnicity was Jesus? Jesus was an ancient Israelite. That was his ethnicity. He was Jewish. I love dogs. Yeah, I love dogs. White Jews from Poland are genetically and mostly a mixture of Levantines and Southern Europeans, not Polish at all. High incidence of light skin comes from genetic bottlenecks in their case. It's actually true. If you look at genetic studies of Polish Jews, like they ultimately have really similar genetics to, Middle Eastern Jews. Jesus looked like a sandpiper. So true. So unbelievably true. Jesus was a Levantine Jew. Your father is Egyptian. $3,000 apartment, Turkish dog going to Israel. Damn, Jew is loaded. Okay, one, I don't have a $3,000 apartment. I pay $3,000 a month on this place, and it's extremely, extremely expensive. But the funny thing is, it's literally just a normal place in Brisbane. It's just our rental market's fucking mental. And yeah, look, I've been struggling to pay the rent. So if you've been enjoying my show, if you've been enjoying the Drew's Fortress of Righteousness, consider a super chat, guys. Consider putting in a $5 super chat. Help me pay the rent. It's a very important and powerful thing. Generally, the historic Jesus would look like anyone else from that region of the world. Yeah, true. Get it over 50 tonight. Yeah, I'd love to. Guys, if you can help us, smash the like button. Smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Help us reach 50 people live. Fortress of Righteousness. You Greeks really miss Constantinople. Yo. Powell's views on immigration had 70-80% public support at the time. At no point have the public supported mass migration. Starmer is just reflecting that. Listen, you can't go on forever with a policy that's really unpopular. Drew, do you like poo? Fuck off. Bullied by the chat groiper. Hassan Piker has been apprehended by the Trump administration. Wow, 1,000 tiny violins for Hassan Piker. It's so sad. He wasn't apprehended because he criticized Trump. He was questioned at the border because he constantly endorsed the terrorist attacks. What the fuck is Avi Yemeni? Avi Yemeni is Jewish and he's from Yemen. He's a Yemenite Jew. And if you look into it, there are literally no Jews from Yemen living in Yemen anymore. The entire population was ethnically cleansed. So I like to say, when people get mad at me for going on Avi Yemeni's show because he's done lots of problematic things in the past, I like to just say, listen, he's got a lot of historic trauma as a Yemenite Jew. Bukele is also Palestinian. Yeah, that's a funny fact, right? People don't realize that Bukele is literally Palestinian. Islamofascism is very interesting. We should put you in a hamster wheel too. You lose all that fat groiper. Fuck off. Hi. Aussies are a bit obsessed with the color of one's skin. Not really, dude. These are just a couple. They're just like a bunch of retarded Nazis who follow me. Some of those second generation families are citizens. I do think that somebody, if they have become a citizen, but they commit, like if they are responsible for murder or rape, or they support ISIS or extremist ideology, they should be, I think citizenship should be on the table for being removed. Jesus was a black Israelite. Facts. Time to grow up and read your Bible. Maybe you'll hit 50 viewers on this one. Keep talking about immigration. It's topical on the algorithm. I'm not doing it for views. I actually am interested in this, but yeah. Jesus was Albanian. Okay, finally something that we can all agree on in this chat. Jesus was Albanian. Go back to the interview. Stop talking shit. Okay, guys, I will go back to the internet. I will go back to the interview. Is there anything else I need to respond to in the chat? Everyone misses Constantinople. Okay, let's watch it.
Of numbers were grossly underestimated 2 or 3 years ago. I myself underestimated them in 1964, 1960.
Thank you, Andrew Landry. I put out a call to the Mossad for funding just then, and Andrew Landry, you heard the call. Thank you so much. Viva Keir Starmer and Tony Blair, great social democrats. Well said. We're sensible social democrats here, like Keir Starmer, and we're saying, listen, we just want to lower migration so that there's less strain on the housing and infrastructure, and we have more cultural cohesion in the society.
65, I myself supposed that this immigrant population, which I've explained, would stabilize at roughly 1 million. And while I thought that this was something which would have been better if it had been avoided, still it didn't seem to me that it represented a major problem for the future of this country. It is the numerical facts that have changed the outlook. Yes,
I think that you as a philosopher will recognize that one of the dangers of reasonable argument is that it's often rationalistic to the exclusion of empirical arguments, and that rationalism is not necessarily a recommendation. It may in fact seriously undermine the empirical and reasonable social validity of such an argument. There are so many.
Splendid.
There are so many empirical falsehoods in what you've said that I think I'd like to take one or two of them rather carefully. First of all,
yes, only it's my program and not yours.
No, it belongs to no one. It belongs to no one at all.
Shall I take one point?
No, first of all, the program belongs to no one. It's Mr. Cavot's program, and we are simply talking to one another.
So you and I must be careful not to hog it, and in particular,
no one is hogging. You have to.
Enoch Powell thought he was a genius, but used the same nasty racist speech as a drunk in a pub, an embarrassment to himself and the country. The sad thing is, he did use racial slurs and stuff like that in his infamous Rivers of Blood speech. He used racial slurs, and this was a guy who was a highly educated classicist, and he lowered himself to the point of using literal slurs. So it's a big shame. It's a big shame, right? Jonathan Miller reminds me of Kitchen. That's funny. Vietran. Oh, fuck off. Honestly, I'm going to block this guy. Fuck this guy. So, some Nazi guy's going, Jonathan Miller is Jewish. Dude, like, who cares? Yeah, because Enoch Powell did use racial slurs, right? So, like, while it may be true that, you know, the majority of the British population wanted to lower migration, that's a fact. Also, it may be true that it was, you know, it may be true as well that, like, you know, he was unfortunately a prophet when it came to the fact that there would eventually be sectarian politics in Britain. Unfortunately true. But again, at the end of the day, he used racial slurs in his speeches, which is a disgrace. Like, you know, this was a highly educated classicist, and he lowered himself to the point of literally using racial slurs in his speeches, which is like, it's a real disgrace and a shame that someone so educated would lower himself to that. State Department funding. Thoughts on dealing with the UK, Australia institutional pushback or failure, NGO, civil service to act on migration policy changes? Actually, a very good question. You know, Chris, do you want to come on the show? I can literally send you. The link. But yeah, look, it's really annoying because I see these arguments all the time where they're like, oh, the Australian public service, they just can't lower the visa numbers, and they say the same in Britain. It's like, dude, just lower them. Like, just don't approve them. It's how hard can it be? Just don't approve them. Because you see this narrative where people are going like, oh, they've got no choice. The numbers are just higher than expected this term. And it's like, dude, you control the numbers. You literally control the numbers. Just literally do less. Like, it's pretty fucking ridiculous, right? So there's been this narrative like recently where even before the speech, Keir Starmer was saying, I don't think we're going to be able to, you know, they were worried they wouldn't be able to get migration below 350,000 a year. And it's like, dude, you literally control the visa system. Just literally approve less visas. Like, how hard can it be? I want to thank our friends in Mossad right now. We've got $12 in super chats. That's really powerful. Vietran says win Agent Orange. So Vietran has really just absolutely mogged the Islamists in the chat. Someone says using slurs and all. No, slurs are a sign of an uneducated and primitive mind. Viva Mossad, defending civilization from pack rapists and maniacal mullahs. Well said, Mr. Landiu. Well said. It's very funny because, guys, if you ever look into Landiu's background, he's only figure on the Australian centre-left that's more hated than me, perhaps. More controversial, more cancelled. Let's watch it more.
As I didn't interrupt your contribution,
Would you deport an 8th generation Australia that holds an ideology you would consider extremist? No, I wouldn't, because Islamism is an imported extremist ideology to Australia. I still hate I still hate the fascist guys in Australia. Of course, I still hate National Socialist Network, but you can't deport them. That's a homegrown problem. Whereas to have Islamist terrorists in Australia is literally a choice, because there weren't Islamist terrorists 50 years ago in Australia. It's a choice to have that. It's an imported it's an imported extremist ideology. Like, Islamism is not native to Australia. Unfortunately, like, you know, white supremacist extremist ideology, unfortunately, that has a long past in Australia. And so deporting people isn't going to solve that issue, right? But Islamism is a foreign alien ideology to Australia, and it literally didn't exist until 50 years ago. So you could just choose not to have it in your country.
I'm sure you will only interrupt my contribution very briefly.
I'm not interrupting your contribution. I'm simply offering a point. What I want to ask you.
Drew, but can't white people convert to Islam and become Islamists via state-sponsored dawah attempts from groups like Qatar? But dude, if you look at it, if you look at the problem of like Islamism in Australia, it's very, very, very rarely to be a white revert. Like in basically like 95% of cases, the vast, overwhelming majority of cases, it is like, it's basically second-generation migrants, unfortunately. That's unfortunately the truth.
One or two issues. Are you worrying about the increase in numbers or the increase in the number of people who the population at large feel anxious about because of some certain recognizable feature they have? Are you worrying about the increase in the size of the population or the increase of a certain element of the population which is in some way have features which are like...
Of course, we are not concerned with the increase in the total population from, say, 55 to 60 million. We are concerned with the increase in an element of a population which is profoundly different, thinks itself different, is seen as different from the rest. And that is where the significance both of number and of concentration comes in. Now, it could be as serious, indeed it could be more serious, if that different population were white and not colored. I can well imagine that if they were, for example,
that's interesting. Let's listen to that.
different is seen as a population which is profoundly different, thinks itself different, is seen as different from the rest. And that is where the significance both of number and of concentration comes in. Now, it could be as serious...
Max, I'm sorry, but you're not going to defeat jihadists in the marketplace of ideas. Like, that's just so discredited. You're not going to defeat jihadists in like literally like the intellectual marketplace of ideas.
Indeed, it could be more serious if that different population were white and not colored. I can well imagine that if they were, for example, Germans or Russians who were going to be occupying 2/5 or a half of Birmingham at the beginning of the...
I agree with John as is here. Enoch Powell was a wanker. He made the issue about race when actually the problem is cultural supremacism, i.e. support for Hamas or the Muslim Brotherhood and religious extremism. That's true. I think it's not a problem of race. I think it's a problem of culture, where cultural supremacism exists. If somebody's come into the country and they hold the supremacist attitudes about their own culture and they want to, supplant the existing culture or completely change the culture. Yeah, Max, I know that a lot of the people who went off to fight for ISIS were born in Britain, but they're not British, are they? They're often the sons and children. That's often the sons of migrants. And so if they were born in Britain, but they fight for ISIS, they're fighting for a foreign terrorist organization that's hostile to Britain, and therefore they're not British. They've basically invalidated their own citizenship by fighting for ISIS, and then I would just cancel their citizenship. I think it's pretty seriously pretty simple. If you're a citizen but you go off and fight for ISIS, cancel the citizenship. But yeah, I agree with John is that like the problem is actually a problem of culture. And the good thing about that is that you can actually change culture. Culture can change. Culture is there's nothing immutable about culture. Culture is always in flux. Culture can always change. And so you can actually change horrible cultural beliefs and values and attitudes. You can change that through education. You can change that through debate and discussion and stuff like that. So it's not a problem of race. And unfortunately, Enoch Powell was making it about race. Although it is interesting here that he said his ideas would still apply if it were to be like, say, 5 million Germans or 5 million Russians and 5 million white Germans, 5 million white Russians. It's interesting, but at the same time, he was obviously using racial slurs against black people. So I think he was probably just saying that to defend himself. I think that probably is not actually the case. I think ultimately for Enoch Powell, it was about race.
For the next century, we should, yes, in occupation, living it. But as with some of your American cities, a considerable proportion.
Look at Ben Breaker. So Ben Breaker is the guy who did the MCG plot. The plot to carry out a terrorist bombing at the MCG, and it would have killed thousands of people. So Ben Breaker is a really good example here. where look at Ben Bricker, years in jail, years of de-radicalization treatment, released, then court fundraising for hate preachers until busted by ASIO. I don't think he's likely to be persuaded by debate. Exactly, he's just not going to be persuaded by debate. And honestly, in the case of Ben Bricker, literally just cancel the citizenship and deport him. And that's literally just how I would see it with Ben Bricker. Literally cancel citizenship and deport him. I think the UK has reached this low point because of the evil of cultural relativism. Anyone coming to the West should want and prove that they're West-like, or at least believe in Western cultural values. Yeah, I think you're right, King of Corinth. I think the problem is cultural relativism, the idea that no culture is better than another culture, therefore we should just tolerate people engaging in horrible practices in Britain and stuff like that. And it's just not working, is it? The sons of parents that were not radicalized in the home, but radicalized by online content or radical preachers like Abu the Hook, Hamza, and Finsbury Park Mosque when I lived in the UK. Yeah, but just seriously, just deport Abu the Hook, Hamza, and Finsbury. Yeah, seriously. And also close down the radical mosque. So if there's a mosque that's proven, if there's a mosque with proven links to hate speech, simply shut it down. It's very simple and very easy. So for example, there's that guy Wissam Hadid who's running the mosque in Western Sydney, the hate mosque. And it's very simple. Just literally shut down that mosque. Literally just shut it down.
In the case of Birmingham, it will be at least 2/5.
Yeah. So High Court made a massive decision that made a massive error in giving Ben Bricker his citizenship back. What an absolute disaster, hey. What an absolute disaster. He should never have had his citizenship restored. Just such a joke. From this time forward, under God, I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey. So that's the citizenship pledge. And I think it's very simple, right? It's as simple as this, right? If you break the citizenship pledge, then you don't have citizenship any longer. So if it's proven that you don't believe in democracy and you actually hate the rights and liberties of the Australian people and you do not uphold the laws of Australia, then simply you've broken your citizenship pledge, therefore you're not a citizen. If you police Islam, you must police all other faiths as well. I mean, yeah, but dude, if there was an extremist Christian sect plotting to blow people up, of course we would have ASIO, really investigating that, right? I'm not going to make excuses for Christians. I'm not going to make any excuses for Christian fundamentalists. Of course not. But it does seem like the main problem with terrorist attacks is coming from Islamist extremism.
Will be occupied by the immigrants and their descendants by the early years of the next century.
Above all, their descendants.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, but
those descendants will still be thoroughly separate for the most part from the rest of the population because of the numbers. If the numbers were small, then of course, like any very small minority, they would filter into the population. But nobody seriously imagines that if 2/5 of Birmingham consists of a first generation of descendants born here, of people from the West Indies, from Africa.
Thoughts on Lydia Thorpe potentially breaking her pledge to Thoughts on Lydia Thorpe apparently failing her pledge when she was signing up to be a parliamentary member. Honestly, that should be investigated. I think honestly she should potentially be removed from the Senate if she is not willing to sign the pledge. So Landy is saying Lydia Thorpe did pledge allegiance to King Charles III. So yeah, look, if you that's it. If Queen Elizabeth II at the time, if she doesn't pledge allegiance as a senator, then you can't be a senator. That's the pledge of allegiance every senator must make.
Africa and from Asia, there will not be a profound difference.
King Corinne says the outcomes match his prediction, but the factors responsible are not what he describes. Interesting. What do you mean by that, King Corinne?
Between that part of the population and the rest?
I think there may be a difference. In fact, there certainly will be a difference. Whether that difference is enough to promote anxiety, unless someone declares.
You think nobody would notice?
No, I think they'll notice, certainly. The question about is whether they will notice with fear and horror, unless someone announces to them that fear and horror are appropriate response to such a fact.
I see. And you think that human nature is such that unless somebody referred to this, nobody would notice that their own native cities were transformed, that the white population was moving out and a different population was moving in.
I didn't say that.
Well, you think then that it would be noticed, but that it would not merely be tolerated, but would be taken as a desirable or acceptable development.
No, I didn't say that either.
Well, that is what you have to say. That is what you have to.
The Green Party in Australia is the most unhinged Green Party I've ever seen. Yeah, no, they've literally gone so insanely unhinged. 30% of the current Australian population is born overseas. That's a really incredibly high number. I swear no oaths. My great uncle swore oaths to Hitler and they all died for it. Fucking hell. She's just a poser and idiot, but she wanted to keep getting paid, so she repeated the oath correctly. Yeah, that's true. Because Lydia Thorpe knew that if she didn't repeat the oath, she wouldn't be sworn in and then she wouldn't be paid. Senator Thorpe recited the oath incorrectly and then proceeded to say it really sarcastically. It was fun to watch John Oliver melt down over it. You should watch the clip after. Okay, I'll watch that next. Look at Birmingham today, but it's not because of the number; it's because of the culture. Okay, I actually think King of Corinth is right. I think King of Corinth is right there. I think the problem with Birmingham is that it's sectarianism rather than. So that's my problem, right? The problem is that it's a sectarian mindset where Islamists view non-Muslims as less valuable than Muslims. That's the main problem, right? And that's why there's no assimilation. That's why it's the problem is this outlook of cultural supremacism. Oh, Vietran, are you shocked by that number? Yeah, it's literally crazy, right? So it's 30%, I think, in Australia are born overseas. Let me get the actual number. It's a really crazy number, to be honest. How interesting that the topic of debate in the video from years ago is still being hotly debated today. Yeah, it's true. Okay, so I've got a statistic up here. I'll go back to the video. I'll just quickly put this up 1 second. So the proportion of Australia's population born overseas nationally was 29.3% as of June 2021. That would be a lot higher now, I think. I wonder what that would be in 2025. So it reached 30.7% in 2023.
I was saying...
People, even non-Islamists, come here hating the UK and refusing to do away with aspects of the third world mindset. It's typical. It's not the numbers that cause the outcomes alone. I think that's true, Corinth. But I tried to say this in the stream yesterday and the other day. I think numbers do come into it if the volume is too high. So, for example, I was saying, right, my family migrated from Greek Cyprus to Australia. If I'd gone to a school that was 99% other Greek Australians, right, and I had no cultural contact with non-Greek Australians, if I had just lived my entire youth siloed off as, part of like a Greek Australian community in a kind of sectarian community, there's no way that I would have ultimately been able to assimilate as an Australian. So I think volume does come into it. If the volume is too high, it's more likely that you will get sectarian enclaves where people are siloed off from one another. And I think it's the lack of cultural interaction between the mainstream society and the cultural enclave. I think that's the main problem that we're dealing with. No, I was shocked that other guy said his family was wiped out because they pledged an oath to Hitler. Oh, yeah, no, that was pretty crazy. It's 40% plus now. I don't know if it's 40% plus, but the media suppresses all vigorous debate about immigration. We are all being gaslit. It's pretty bad right now. Powell had been in Parliament for 18 years and had said very little on it until this infamous speech. It was a calculated move to become leader of the Conservatives. Very ugly stuff. That's a pretty good point by Lendu, I think. That's a pretty good point by Lendu. If Enoch Powell had been part of the Parliament for 18 years and basically never talked about immigration prior to that, I mean, that's not good, right? I mean, that doesn't really show that it's coming from a principled place, does it? Drew, ask Rock, what % of X industry in Australia is born overseas, try construction, software engineer, real estate? I don't think there's breakdown of statistics like that, Mr. F. Bro, if your parents wanted you to hate Australia as a kid, you'll hate Australia as a kid. That's the problem, right? If people teach their children to hate the country. Drew, no, what about your SEO? What? Even if you're the only non-whites in your town. Also, you have to be selective on who you take in. The fault is not the immigrants, it's woke socialist lefty apologists like this dusty old poof debating pal. Okay, Max. If you call it anything other than Drew Pavlou podcast, it is harder for people to find your shit. Oh. Okay, so Pickles is saying don't change the name from Drew Pavlou Show. He's saying keep it Drew Pavlou Show because it'll change the Google algorithm. Damn, Fortress of Righteousness is such a funny show though, man. We wanted to call it Fortress of Righteousness because of the because that's what Friendly Geordies was using to mock me, and it's such a funny term. But I think Pickles does have a good point if he's noting that that Fortress of Righteousness, if I change the name, it might mess up the algorithm. Search engine true. I think that might be right. I think Pickles LeBlanc might be right there. Ghettoization is the biggest problem. I think that's right. It's people being walled off in cultural enclaves. Yeah, the SEO will get fucked. Damn, man. Okay, maybe I do need to just change it back to the Drew Pavlou Show. Fortress of Righteousness is such a funny name, though. Fuck. Damn it. Oh, okay. Damn, that is a good show. Drew Pavlou podcast, Fortress of Righteousness. I really wanted to use. You can just add your surname to the title. Drew Pavlou, Fortress of Righteousness. That should be fine, right? If I call it Drew Pavlou, Fortress of Righteousness?
Not exist. I did not say that ethnic frictions don't exist between groups that are drawn from different areas and that have different racial origins. Social cooperation is a hard and a difficult thing. I feel that you would have done your duty as a politician, as an ethical politician, much more productively if instead of exciting the notion of future strife, you had encouraged the notion of future cooperation on the basis of understanding.
Then will you tell me why it is that those in the race relations industry who profess to be trying to do just that find it necessary to draw attention to the dangers of future strife and indeed do so in terms as strong as any that I have ever used?
I will not be saddled with the follies of the other side as well. The mere fact that errors are made by people who have the best intentions does not mean that I have to adopt their methods or favor them.
No,
I deplore your techniques and I deplore some of their techniques. What I ask for is not rationalism or reasonableness, but a sense of the variety of human existence and also an attention to the capacities of human beings to absorb each other's differences rather than an encouragement and an exhortation to excite the sense of difference and to deplore it.
And what I ask for is that you should not live in a fool's paradise.
May I ask for what's left of my part of the program? We will return after this message from our local station. I'm talking with Enoch Powell and with Jonathan Miller. Would you then have to admit that if all of the immigrants that
I do think Jonathan Miller is too optimistic. I do think he's too idealistic. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of sectarian conflict in Britain.
Question here, were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, you would be less exercised over this subject than you are.
But they're not immigrants. Those wouldn't be immigrants, would they?
If there were an influx of an equal number of white Anglo-Saxon.
Well, if the population's the same, the population's the same. A problem doesn't arise, does it?
No, I think I'm stating the question clearly, aren't I?
Wait, hang on. Let me
absorb each other's
What's he saying?
Rather than an
for what's left of my part of the program. We will return after this message from would you then have to admit that if all of the immigrants that are in question here were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, you would be less exercised over this subject?
Oh, but okay, this is a silly question because, as Enoch does eventually point out, like if they're not but ipso facto they're not migrants. Then he's asking, well, would you have a problem if they're all white Anglo-Saxon Christians? And it's like, but then they wouldn't be migrants to Britain, would they? So I don't think that's a really sensible question, right? Sorry, Drew, when was this created? It was 1971. Isn't it crazy? It's literally 54 years later or whatever, and this debates are still going.
Subject than you are.
But they're not immigrants. Those wouldn't be immigrants, would they?
If there were an influx of an equal number of white Anglo-Saxon.
Well, if the population's the same, the population's the same.
Yeah, no, this is a good point by King of Corinth. There was an influx of white immigrants in the UK, aka Polish, Eastern Europeans, and the UK went crazy. And that was actually fucking stupid. Like, Polish people migrate and integrate very well into Britain. I think the fact that people in Britain had a freak out over Polish immigrants is actually brain dead retarded. That, like, the Polish integrate very fine in Britain. There's no Polish grooming gangs. There's no Polish fucking terrorist acts, right?
A problem doesn't arise, does it?
No, I think I'm stating the question clearly, aren't I? I'm saying that isn't it not logical, conceivable, probable that part of your concern is the difference in culture of these people and the difference in race?
Well, of course, if there were no difference, there would be no problem. Of course.
If there were, well.
Shall we start our program again?
I'll start another program.
I've got one question I want to ask. If in fact and I recognize what it is that worries you about the arrival.
What worries me?
Or that worries the people who you supposedly represent.
That worries the people of this country.
Right, that worries the people of this country. Let's leave it at this moment. If you are worried, and they are worried, about the arrival of a group of people in the culture who, by reason of differences of behavior, are going to represent a stress upon that culture, I'm very surprised that one of the other forms of immigration, one of the largest influxes that has ever occurred in the history of this island, which has occurred in the last 25, 30 years, as a result of the introduction of antibiotics. It's the influx from the land of the dead, who are not usually recognized as such.
This is a pretty silly argument. Oh, if you support antibiotics, therefore infinite migration. Come on, guys. Like, that's not an argument, is it?
An extraordinary proportion of people who are now allowed to live beyond ages which, as a result of diseases of the chest and cardiovascular system, they would not. You have recalled from another country, if you like, a very large group of people who, by virtue of their age, are throwing acute stresses upon the culture of the country, precisely because families find it very hard to live on very large numbers of occasions with old people for precisely the reasons that you are talking about, because they have different habits due to their age. Now, no one suggests, for example, that this population from the other side of the Styx are going to be given their fare and Charon's pennies to return them because they are an inconvenience due to their cultural differences from the young group upon whom they now become a burden. What we are learning to do is to accommodate old people, or should be doing, although, in fact, in the next 30 years, they will represent perhaps an even greater danger to the structure of our society if we cannot intelligently accommodate these people that we have rescued from this other foreign country, from much further away than Jamaica or from India. And I just wonder how you feel about that sort of...
You know what's funny, Max? I've actually watched Gore Vidal v. William F. Buckley. That was actually a really good debate. I watched that back a couple of years ago. It was a good debate.
problem, because I feel that from the metaphor of that problem, we can learn how to handle other people who've also come from other countries.
Well, you called it a metaphor, and of course it is a metaphor, and a very striking and moving metaphor. Of course, they didn't come back. They were prevented from going there. And these people are our parents, our relatives, our own flesh and blood, part of the inhabitants of this island whose age structure and whose numbers, for the reasons which you've explained, have changed. Of course there are problems there. And there are problems which, unless we were to forswear the use of antibiotics and so on...
Something which is suggested by large numbers of doctors after the age of 60, incidentally.
I said unless we were to forswear that, is inevitable. But the immigration was not inevitable. This was due to a state of the law of this country, to which there is no parallel in any other country. This was due to the government of this country, and I take my share of the blame for it, deferring for too long to bring the law of this country into accord with reality. It is therefore something preventable in its growth and at any rate in part reversible, since unlike the land of the dead, a great majority of the immigrants here and their children born here are the citizens of their home countries. So that is at any rate that, along with other basic differences, the difference between something which is remediable or partly remediable and something which, failing euthanasia and so on, is not. But I think if I may say so, that the contrast which the metaphor imports is a very instructive one.
I want to quickly, this is such a funny scene from 4 Lines. I was just thinking of it because we're talking about Islamism in Britain. This is just like the best movie ever. It's so fucking funny. Watch this. The funniest shit in history.
All right, lads, this is it. This is it, boys. I've spoken to the Emir.
And I'll play this one.
Well, we've got a target.
All right, lads, this is it. This is it, boys.
Is that true about Enoch Powell? I've never read that.
I've spoken to the Emir. Whoa. And how did you do that? Email Dropbox and the children's instant messaging site. Party puffin.
I've been on that.
Good, Raj.
Proper good.
Do we have to be puffins as well? Yeah, I'll give you all username and passwords after this meeting. I'm not sure I want to be a puffin. You don't have to be if you don't want to, Barry.
Bagsy blue one, yeah?
Good, Raj. Now, I've spoken to him. My puffin has communicated with his puffin. And he's told us to make some bombs.
My puffins talk to his puffins.
Take Fessel's gear to the secret flat. You can hide it under the costumes in Hassan's van. We'll put the bleach on boil.
Right.
We have instructions to bring havoc to this bullshit, consumerist, godless, packy bashing, Gordon Ramsay, taste the difference, specialty cheddar, torture endorsing, massacre sponsoring, Look at me dancing, pissed with me knob out, sky one uncovered. Who gives a fuck about dead Afghanis Disneyland? Mashallah, brother Omar. Mashallah.
Mashallah.
Puffin says, find a target.
Well, we've got a target, bro. We're all agreed.
This is the funniest part. Watch this. I always laugh at this scene.
It's the mosque. Yeah, on the mosque, radicalise the moderates, bring it all on.
You radicalize the moderates by bombing. Oh my god, so funny.
Okay, right, no, I like that. I do like that. That's brilliant. Because let's take out a bunch of Muslims because they're the real enemy. Aren't they, Barry? Once we've done that, why don't we truck bomb a kebab shop?
Chuck bomb a kebab shop.
Into Wadger's mum's head. Why don't we get a pig and staple gun it to our foreheads?
But if we bomb the mosque, it'll make all the Muslims rise up.
My cousin Faz died defending a mosque in Bosnia. Did he flipping rise up, bro? Let's bomb Boots. They sell condoms that make you want to bang white girls.
Second that, Boots. Right. Then have me nicking links display.
Right, lads, think of it bigger than a chemist, right? Not blowing a good sound.
It's a fucking good show. Rubber Dinghy Rapids.
A bunch of tampons and cotton buds, right? What we're going to do is got a lasting history. Echo through the ages. I'd bomb a mosque. We're not bombing a mosque.
You don't get it, do you, Omar? We radicalise the moderates, the Ummah rises up, it all kicks off.
No, I do get it. I tell you what it's like. It's like in a fight with someone and they're punching you in the face, right? Right? And so what you go and do is you punch yourself in the face.
All right, so what if he's not... I'm having a fight with this fictionary man and he's not punching me hard enough in the face to make me go mental and win.
Let's do an experiment, Barry. We'll have a fight right now, right? And when you start losing and you're not doing very well, you punch yourself in the face, go mental, and start winning. Show them all how that works.
I'm not going to punch myself in the face.
Why not, Barry? You're the Muslims. You're getting attacked. Barry,
Listen,
go mental. Go mental, Barry. Show that works. Come on, you swear. I'm the mosque, Barry.
It's just not how it works.
It's bombed the mosque. It's just bombed the mosque. Barry, where are the monitors? Wait, the monitors should be coming down.
Which I'm not, then there will be all moderates behind my nose bursting to come out and rise up.
They are, bro. Barry, the Sufi Muslim Council's coming out your nose. Oh, you've just wiped them out. You've just wiped them out. You think we should still bomb a mosque, Barry? Barry, I got you. Jacob.
Fucking good show. What else should we watch? Oh, actually, you know what? We haven't even seen Keir Starmer yet. We haven't even seen Keir Starmer talk yet. Okay, let me put that on. So Keir Starmer's home got firebombed after he made this speech. Actual firebombing. Hang on. Let me get up at his actual speech. So this is his speech.
Control of our borders.
Okay, so this is his speech. This is a big shift in British
Today we
history.
publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy, and our country.
Squalid chapter.
Take
Interesting.
back control. Everyone knows that slogan.
Take back control. Isn't it interesting? That's literally the Brexit slogan.
And everyone knows what it meant on immigration, or at least that's what people thought. Because what followed from the previous government, starting with the people who used that slogan, was the complete opposite. Between 2019 and 2023, even as they were going around our country, telling people with a straight face that they would get immigration down, net migration quadrupled until in 2023, it reached nearly 1 million. That's about the population of Birmingham, our second largest city. That's not control, it's chaos. And look, they must answer for themselves. But I don't think that you can do something like that by accident. It was a choice made even as they told the country, they were doing the opposite. A one-nation experiment in open borders, conducted
One nation experiment in open borders. These are very powerful words.
on a country that voted for control. Well, no more. Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over.
The experiment is over. We're shutting down the lab. Very powerful words.
We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders. And let me tell you why. Because I know on a day like today, people who like politics will try to make this all about politics, about this or that strategy, targeting these voters, responding to that party. No, I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair.
Well said.
And because it is what I believe in. Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules, fair rules. Sometimes they're written down, often they're not. But either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks
Island of strangers. And that's the comment that everyone kept on trying to compare to Enoch Powell.
forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, but encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth. You're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
Yep, well said.
That's why some of the policies in this white paper go back nearly 3 years. Why I told the Labour Party conference, taking back control is a Labour argument. And why, most importantly of all, inward migration is already falling with this government. It's about fairness. And look, I mean, migration is part of Britain's national story. We talked last week about the great rebuilding of this country after the war. Migrants were part of that. And they make a massive contribution today. And you will never hear me denigrate that. But when people come to our country, they should also commit to integration, to learning our language.
Yep,
And
well
our
said.
system should actively distinguish between those that do and those that don't. I think that's fair. Equally, Britain must compete for the best talent in the world, in science, in technology, in healthcare. You can't simply pull up a drawbridge, let nobody in, and think that's an economy that would work. That would hurt the pay packets of working people without question. But at the same time, we do have to ask why parts of our economy seem almost addicted to importing cheap labour,
Yep,
rather
true.
than investing in the skills of people who are here
Addicted
and want
to
a good
cheap
job
labour.
in their community. Sectors like engineering, where visas have rocketed while apprenticeships have plummeted. Is that fair to Britain? Is that fair to young people, weighing up their future to miss out on those apprentices? To see colleges in their community almost entirely dedicated to one-year courses for overseas students? No, I don't think that it is. And truth be told, I don't think anybody does. Yet that is the Britain this broken system has created. So as this white paper sets out, every area of the immigration system, work, family, and study, will be tightened up so we have more control. Skill requirements raised to degree level. English language requirements across all routes, including for dependents. The time it takes to acquire settled status extended from 5 years to 10. And enforcement tougher than ever, because fair rules must be followed. Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear.
Promise.
If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will. But it's not just about numbers, because the chaos of the previous government also changed the nature of immigration in this country. Fewer people who make a strong economic contribution, more. who
It's
work as
base.
part of
It's
our
really
economy
good.
that put downward pressure on wages. So perhaps the biggest shift in this white paper is that we will finally honour what takes
The
back
House of
control
Laws
meant
reform, I don't know about
and
that.
begin to
I don't know about
choose
that. It's
who
an
comes
old
here,
institution.
so that migration works for our national interest. You know, this is where the whole debate is skewed, as if some people think controlling immigration is reining in a sort of natural freedom, rather than the basic and reasonable responsibility of government to make choices that work for a nation's economy. And for years, this seems to have muddled our thinking. But let me be clear, it ends now. We will create a migration system that is controlled, selective, and fair. A clean break with the past that links access to visas directly to investment in homegrown skills. So that if a business wants to bring people in from abroad,
Hello, Haya.
they
How you
must
going,
first
mate?
invest in Britain. But also, so settlement becomes a privilege that is earned.
I don't
by
support
right.
republicanism in
Easier if
Australia.
you make a contribution. If you work,
We already have
we
such
build
problem defining our national identity. I
some
don't
people
see
may
it's a good thing
even
to
be against that.
also just.
But I think for the vast majority of people in this country,
Let me just answer that really quickly. Republicanism in Australia. We already have such a problem defining our national identity. I don't think at this time, when you've got people chanting "Abolish Australia" in the streets, I don't think it's a good idea to just completely revamp the entire constitutional structure of Australia.
that is what they have long wanted to see. An immigration system that is fair, that works for our national interest, and that restores common sense and control to our borders. That is what this white paper will deliver. Lower net migration, higher skills, backing British workers. The start of repairing our social contract, which the chaos and cynicism of the last government did so much to undermine.
Repair the social contract. That's what you got to do.
I'll now take a number of questions.
Let's see the questions.
From the media. I've got a hopefully accurate list here, starting with Chris Mason, BBC. Chris.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. Let's be clear, are you promising today that net migration will fall every year between now and the next election, come what may?
Well, I'm promising it will fall significantly, and I do want to get it down by the end of this Parliament significantly. That is what this plan is intended to achieve, the complete opposite of what you saw in the last 4 years. It is frankly incredible that net migration quadrupled in 4 short years to nearly 1 million. This white paper, we plan to bring it back into control, make sure it's controlled, that is selective, that we decide who comes to this country, and that it is fair. And that's what we will do, significant reduction in immigration. And as I think...
Yeah, it's honestly national vandalism how the Tories imported 1 billion people while smashing all the already stressed out public services with a hammer. So they do austerity, fuck over the social services, and then import 1 billion people on top of that. It's literally just like national suicide. It's actually, Tories did so much damage to Britain.
Vindicated.
I actually agree with Max here. Britain is a shining example for the world on what not to do.
Further measures, then that's what we will do. Thank you. Robert,
In regards to the India-Pakistan stuff, there has been small drone activity reported yesterday night by the army at the border. It's mostly it's going down though, right? It's the tension's lowering, right?
Robert Beston, ITV. Prime Minister, you know that countries that...
Yeah, guys, keep in mind we literally have per capita a higher rate of migration than Britain. Australia receives a much higher caliber of immigrant. It might have been true in the past, but I think post-COVID, standards have been relaxed a lot. There's been a lot of credential fraud in the system, unfortunately.
that want to grow are in a global race for top talent. Your number one priority is growth. Haven't you shot yourself in the foot by insisting that those who want to be citizens now have to live here twice as long as those who want to be American citizens? And if I may, we've just heard that there will be a 90-day massive reduction in the tariffs that China and America are imposing on each other. Are you relieved that at least temporarily they've laid down their economic arms?
Well, let me take both those points, but I'm not encouraging 2 questions each because we've got to just get through this. On the growth question, I do think this is worth taking some time on because the theory that higher migration numbers necessarily leads to higher growth has been tested in the last 4 years. So we've had the highest net migration.
Yeah, well said. Honestly, very well
to
said.
nearly 1 million and stagnant growth.
Stagnant growth. That's such a disaster. That's such a disaster, guys. Stagnant growth with infinite migration. It just does not work.
Doesn't hold on that evidence. The second thing is that this white paper is not just a white paper on immigration. It's also a white paper that deals with skills and training. And one of the reasons that we've had stagnant growth, in my view,
I live in Tasmania and society's condensed here, and the change in the last 5 years is mental. I just don't want to see revolutionary changes to the social fabric of Australia. Modi also made an important speech yesterday. You can watch the English breakdown of it. Just type in the print Modi speech, and yes, the tension seemed to have lowered, but I feel we've reached a new norm. Interesting.
4 years is because we've underinvested chronically in skills and growth.
King of Corinth, thank you for joining, man. And I want to say, King of Corinth, I respect you. I think you make good points. And yeah, honestly, I hope you as an individual can make a go of it in Britain because, yeah, I support you, man. You're doing well. So thank you, King of Corinth. I want to say King of Corinth is a really sensible guy. He's a very sensible guy.
Growth. So by putting skills and growth into the same plan as migration, which is something businesses have been asking for years, you actually answer the growth question as well. And I should say as a footnote to that, as you heard in the speech and you'll see in the white paper, in relation
stagnation and migration and boomer demographics. Yeah, great combination.
To high talent where we want the very best into the country, we will have routes to get that talent into this country. And I think there's real potential for us to do so in the current environment. We intend to do so. On the question of the China tariffs, I just saw something flash up in the room back there. I'm not across the complete detail. I'm very pleased, obviously, that we struck our trade deal with the US last week, which will be measured in very many thousands of jobs and billions of pounds into our economy. Thank you, Robert. Sam from Sky. Sam.
Sam Cliff-Skirdies, Prime Minister, just to pick up on growth and migration. One of the reasons that we've had a laxer migration policy for years is because of basically the Treasury view. Successive chancellors, their fiscal rules, and the way that that interacts with the official forecasts means it's always been an easy win to have more growth by having more people in the country. What's your message today to the Treasury, to the OBR, and are you doing anything to actually change the way that they work and look at all this stuff and calculate the cost-benefit analysis of growth and migration?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sam. Just succinctly, and then adding to the answer I just gave. Firstly, the pure theory, if you like, that simply higher migration numbers necessarily leads to higher growth, I think has been tested in the last 4 years. We quadrupled in actually a very short period of time. And I think whatever political persuasion you are, it is quite extraordinary that net migration quadrupled in 4 years. We've never seen that before in this country.
You can't do that. It's insane.
It stayed stagnant. Secondly, this point about skills and migration. What businesses have been calling out for a long time is link migration to the skills and training that we need in this country. In the past, governments have done sort of knee-jerk reductions without making that link. We're making that link in this paper, which is really important in terms of where we go with the economy, because I do think it's underinvestment in those areas that's caused a lot of the problem. The other thing that the paper is doing is readjusting the model, because it's got to a place now where there's many more low skilled jobs rather than high skilled jobs. So by adjusting the threshold for skills, this allows migration to be in the areas of high skills, which are more likely to make a significant contribution to our economy. Thank you very much, Sam. I've got Gary from Channel 4.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Have you been on a bit of a journey yourself on this? Did you used to believe that higher immigration led to higher growth? Would Keir Starmer a few years ago talked about an island of strangers? Are you one of the people who now thinks that after later the ECHR is actually a problem and not something that's just exaggerated by other people?
Well, Gary, thank you very much. I invite you to dig out my conference speech at Labour Party conference. I know you remember them all. But 3 years ago now, I think it was, when I made the very political argument that I've made this morning, which is that take back control, understanding why you need control, selection of fair and gracious, is a Labour argument. And once you've dug out that transcript, there's then the speech I made to CBI, I think about 3 years ago, making the same argument in relation to business, saying too many businesses, in my view, are too dependent on migration rather than training and skilling up people in this country. And I was signalling to the CBI then that would change under a Labour government. So there's a core consistency through here. On Article 8, we do want to ensure that the right balance is made in migration cases in relation to the national interest. There's a balance set out in legislation already. That needs to be adjusted, in my view, and that's what we will do. Thank you, Gary. Chris, sorry, there's a lot of Chris's.
Chris Hope, GB News. Prime Minister, we've been here before, haven't we? There have been 3 Immigration Acts since 2014. The Immigration Act in 2014 and 2016 both aimed to reduce immigration. They both failed. Why on earth should GB News viewers think you're going to succeed? And why not give us a promise right now? Why not give us a fixed target right now, not a promise, so we can judge on success? The Tories did that, but they failed.
Well, look, the difference here, this is the most comprehensive plan that has been put forward. It's been forward to end the Tory sort of wide open borders experiment that we have had. You're right about that. And it looks at all routes, and it's comprehensive, and it does the hard yards of linking skills and business to what we need to do with the economy. So it's not a narrow look just at the numbers. It puts them in their proper context. On the question, which we do want to significantly reduce migration, I'm absolutely making clear that's what it will do, and that if we need to go further, we will. So that's the promise I make to your viewers. I don't think it's sensible to put a hard-edged cap on it. That has been done in one form or another for the best part of 10 years by different prime ministers. The only thing that links those prime ministers and the various caps or quotas or limits they put in place is every single one of them failed. And therefore, going down the failed route is not a sensible way for me. As with everything that I do, serious, pragmatic, looking at the things that will actually make a material difference. Thank you, Chris. Jerry from the Times.
What is your message to the 9 million inactive adults in the UK at the moment who might not think that they should take work in a care home, for example, and also to some of your Labour MPs who might be squeamish about Labour government being a tough line on immigration?
Well, firstly, that's acknowledged within that 9 million. There are some people who can't work, and we need to be clear about that from the start. But there are others who can, and as we set out in our welfare provisions, the principles are clear. Where people can't work and are unlikely to be able to work, they should be protected and supported. But where people can get into work, they should be supported. The current system does the opposite, and so we will support them into work with a £1 billion package, the right to try, and measures like that. And that if you can work, you should work. And I do think that this white paper should be seen in conjunction with what we're doing on welfare. And on squeamishness, I actually think that the Labour Party has as core values the idea that immigration should be controlled.
I forgot the speaker was cranked up, and for a good minute was unironically thinking that it's crazy Starmer can talk so fast. Yeah.
But it should be selective. We should be choosing who we want, high skills, the high talent routes into our country. And it must be fair. They're basic Labour arguments and concepts for many, many years. Thank you. I've got Jack from the Sun. Jack.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You said just now there's a comprehensive plan to bring down legal migration. You also said in the election you had a comprehensive plan to bring down illegal migration. And so far it seems that is working. Small boat crossings going up on your watch. So why should voters think your plan to bring down legal migration will fare any better, especially given you're considering an EU mobility scheme, which could actually increase it?
Well, let's tackle that head on, because nobody should be getting small boats across over the channel and illegally entering this country. The last government lost control of the borders. It falls to this government to clear up that mess in the same way we're clearing up all the other messes that they left behind. I am convinced that the way to do that is to take down the guns that are running the vile trade. And for that reason, we've drafted and put before Parliament a borders bill, which follows through on the promises I made, which is we need to give law enforcement greater powers. Going down the counter-terrorism powers, the thing that distinguishes counter-terrorism from other law enforcement is you can take action earlier. You can be preemptive. You can operate in a completely different way. That's why we've gone for a package that allows law enforcement to go in much earlier. That is going through Parliament. Who is voting against that? The Tories, who caused the problem in the first place. Thank you, Jack. Martin Martin from Daymel. Martin.
Gary asked if you've been on a journey on migration. Similarly, you talked about tough enforcement. One of today's measures is for foreign nationals convicted of any offence to be considered for deportation. Yet just 5 years ago, you signed a letter calling the halt to a deportation flag that contained, amongst others, 2 people convicted of rape and 3 GBH. Your views have changed, haven't they?
No, I've always said that those who commit offences should be deported. I ran the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years between 2008 and 2013, and it fell to my prosecutors on my instructions to ask for deportations in the first place in the Crown course. So I've been really clear. I was in charge of cases where we routinely ask for the judge, because that's the way the system operates in those days, to add to the sentence an order at the end that there should be a deportation. So what's that? That's going back the best part of 20 years. Thank you very much. I've got Michael from the Daily Express. Michael.
Does going further mean disentangling ourselves from the ECHR and disapplying human rights laws in immigration cases?
No, I don't think that is necessary. I also remind myself that the international agreements we've signed have given us the basis for the deals that we've struck on illegal migration. So the Home Secretary has moved fast, working with other countries to put in place materially improved deals with other countries in relation to migration. That would not have been possible if we had been saying at the same time we're about to withdraw from our international obligations. I could give you many more examples than that, but you can't strike those deals with other countries to work more closely together on law enforcement to smash the gangs and to work on returns agreements, which is what we want to do, if in the next breath you're saying you don't believe in international law. If you do, you can strike the deals. If you don't, you can't. And one of the features of the last government is they struggled to strike these deals because other countries said, if you don't comply with international law, why should we write an international agreement with you, which to me is plain common sense. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Interesting. Drew, I think you could move to England and become the Labour Party's strongest warrior. So true. So fucking true, mate. I was thinking to watch a little bit of this. This is really interesting. I really like Adam Curtis. Let's watch a little bit of this before I conclude the sitting.
Hello. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Thanks for inviting me. No problem. Glad to have you on. The union is on the verge of collapse. The economy is on the verge of collapse. And elites manipulating crises to enrich themselves off the state. That sounds like a description of post-COVID Britain, but it equally applies to late 20th century Russia, the subject of your latest series of films, Trauma Zone, which is out on iPlayer now. Could you tell us about it?
Well, I mean, what you described does sound remarkably similar. But on the other hand, though, if you look back to that time, what Russia was like, 30 years ago, or what was called the Soviet Union then, was completely different from us. But its collapse was, in a way, the door that opened to the chaos that we now have everywhere. But it was different. And one of the reasons I made these films is because I don't think that we in the West fully understand or even really comprehend what millions of Russians went through at that point 30 years ago. Because what happened to them was that their whole world just collapsed around them. And it was an empire. I mean, the Soviet Empire was a growth out of the Russian Empire, which had been going for a number of years. And what they experienced was the collapse of an empire. The British Empire collapsed, 80 years it took? They collapsed in just a few months, in 1991. It literally was like that. And then they were promised a new world, which was going to be a kind of democratic capitalism, which would be brought about very quickly. Within 8 years, that had collapsed into total corruption. Their whole institutions had fallen apart. People were living in forests, underground. No one could buy any food. Well, most people couldn't buy any food. And the system was being looted by a small number of very rich people. I don't think we understood what that did to millions of people. And I just wanted to show what it was like. Not just, I wanted to tell the story, but I also wanted to show what it was like. And I was lucky enough to have, because I work in the BBC, the raw material, which had been sitting for years in the Moscow offices of the BBC, thousands of hours of raw, unedited footage recorded all across that country over the past 35 years, which just recorded what it was like. So I just decided I want to show people what this
I love Adam Curtis. He's a really, really smart guy. Really smart guy.
I started it before the invasion of Ukraine. Really as a public service. I just thought, listen, people paid for this material. They should see it. We should put it up on iPlayer. Then the invasion happened, and it became clear to me that really what I should be trying to do is, as well as just doing that, I should be trying to say, look, this is the strange collapse of belief in everything that gave you Vladimir Putin. That it's not some evil conspiracy by the KGB to take control again or anything like that. He was born out of the implosion of an empire and then the implosion of a democratic system. And you need to learn from that. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a little bit dogmatic, but I just think we need to know what they went through in order to understand why Putin happened. He's not just some evil force that came out of another galaxy. He came out of that, and I was just trying to describe that.
We'll come to that and the geopolitical consequences of that implosion. Just a word on your creative process, I guess. How on earth do you go about imposing order on thousands of hours of unedited raw footage from late Soviet?
To be honest, it's like shopping. I don't know if you. The key rule in shopping, as far as I know, is you go to shop. If you spot something you really like, you must buy. If you have any questions about it, don't buy it because you will regret it. And in our digital age, what I got was this footage, which had been recorded on tape, was then digitized and turned into video files. You can go through them very quickly. And I'm afraid this sounds ruthless, but I adopted the shopping approach, which is that if an image grabs me immediately, I think, oh, that's good. And because I think I'm quite normal, I think, well, actually, most people would be interested in that. If I have any questions about it, unless it's completely functional, I need it, I will go, no. So initially, I just go through it. I mean, it takes hours, but I do that. It's just, does that grab you? If it grabs me, then it'll probably grab other people.
You've written about Trauma Zone that for a long time, everyone in that society knew that nothing really worked anymore. There was nothing they could do about it. Were there any in late Soviet Russia who still believed but couldn't see what was self-evident to others?
I think the answer, you mustn't oversimplify society, and I'm sure there were people within the communist system and amongst the elite, which we call the nomenklatura, who did believe in it. But the overwhelming thing you get from talking to Russians from that time, and I was filming there, I made a film there in the early 90s, but also from reading books of people from that time, the overwhelming thing is that no one really believed in that system any longer. And they knew that the people in charge didn't really believe in it any longer. But what people also knew is that those in charge had no other idea of any alternative. So everyone just accepted it as a system that no one believed in, but because there wasn't anything else, you just went along with it. So when it collapsed, it came as a terrible shock, because it wasn't like traditional political revolutions where you're pushed, like say the Russian Revolution, you're pushed along by an alternative idea. There wasn't one. There really wasn't one. And that is the parallel with today here. We have a very different society from Russia 30 years ago. But I would argue that the defining characteristic of our present society in Britain is that everyone knows that somehow this system isn't working. But no one, whether they be in the opposition or in the government or amongst the journalists or amongst many millions of people, have any idea of what other system would work. So we just sort of accept it, lurching. It comes like waves in a sort of fever. We lurch from one position to another, all trying to rework that system. But underneath, we know that they know that we know it isn't working. And it becomes this horrible feedback loop of not knowing it isn't working, but not having any alternative. And they know we know they don't know any future. Well, we do. If you look at the Labour Party at the present moment, they're going to probably win the next election. But they will do it because they're not the present lot. It's not because they're offering us an extraordinary, inspiring alternative. They're not. It doesn't need to be that inspiring. They don't really have any other system. And I think that is similar. We are at the end of something. And maybe Russia was just part of something much, much, much bigger. We could generalize from that, but I won't lead you on to Iran.
That's really interesting. Do you think there is an acknowledgement then about how this current system doesn't work? Do you think that in the same way that in late Soviet Russia, you're seeing those people being told there are no more potatoes in Moscow and being acutely aware of the problems they face? Do you think it is the same?
I think there's a feeling here that it doesn't really work, and that whatever way you try and find out of it, it's like a strange computer game. You somehow come back to the room that you left a few years ago. For example, as we talk now, you have just seen the collapse of a government that was sort of born out of the Brexit, whatever you want to call it, revolution of 2015. Now, in 2022, that government tries to put forward an extreme economic project, which was just to most people completely mad. That yesterday fell. It's been replaced now by another Conservative government, which in response is going to bring back the very kind of policy of austerity, which you could argue is what gave you Brexit in the first place. So it's like some strange drug dream. You've gone through Brexit, through all the contortions, through all the violence, the anger, the fury, to end up with Liz Truss, with an extreme version of capitalist experiment. Within days it fails, and you find yourself back with George Osborne and David Cameron's policies, which failed and gave you that revolt that gave you Brexit. Yet, what happened, if you notice the press and all journalism today, is they're all celebrating this as a return to stability and a return to calm. And that's not just on the traditional right. It's also the left and the liberals are celebrating return to calm. That's mad. And not only is it mad, it actually shows that those people don't have any idea of any alternative. They're celebrating a return to the very thing that they saw as horrific 8 years ago. My maths.
There's an even bigger cycle there, isn't there? You go back to 1979 and Thatcher and her Hayekian ideas that, again, were incredibly inflationary, brought about, she had to U-turn. Admittedly, the tool she turned to was the banks and was the debt. But there's a parallel there. But what I wanted to ask you about, was about that acknowledgement of reality. Because for me, the belief, the politics of ideology of fantasy infuses Brexit, right? The way you're talking about it there, this belief that we'll recapture our sovereignty, we'll sail on the high seas, that we'll live in the sunlit uplands of wild economic growth. And then that fantasy comes into contact with reality. And that reality is, a 4% reduction in GDP. It's lengthy, protracted negotiations with the EU where we never really end up in control of our statute book again anyway. And whether that ideology also follows on, well, I think it does, to Trussonomics, to this, again, what you've just outlined, this radical economic project that is conjured up in textbooks and pamphlets, but on contact with reality, falls apart.
As opposed to, you're right that Mrs. Thatcher did try that, and you're right to say that actually it was called a monetarist experiment back in the early 80s, ran completely out of control, led to the pound reaching extraordinary high levels, which destroyed any attempt at having exports, which really began the big deindustrialization of this country, which actually you could argue is where Brexit comes out of. I don't think you should go too heavily on the people wanting a new sovereignty or a return to a dream empire. What Brexit was really about, from my point of view, many people argue about it, is that it was people saying you have a two-party system which keep on imposing this one idea on us, and for us it's not working. We live in those deindustrialized areas, and for the first time for quite a while they were given a very big button. I'm not going to say the phrase, but a very rude phrase on it, and they pressed it. Because wouldn't you, if you lived in Barrow-in-Furness and lived a horrible, shitty life, you would press that. And they pressed it, and out of that came these all strange contortions which led to Johnson and his strange fantasy world. But at least he wanted to try and do something, which was what was called levelling up. What then happened, in some strange way, they turned a corner and went back to the ghost of Mrs. Thatcher, without the fact that Mrs. Thatcher had got a massive majority in order to do that. Yeah, And so in a way they lost all contact with reality. But in response to that, we now have a journalistic establishment, an economic establishment, and a political establishment who are welcoming a return to stability, which is actually, I'm sorry to repeat myself, the thing that gave you Brexit in the first place. So we are trapped in this sort of loop, feedback loop, which I think is created by that fact. It's not so much they've lost contact with reality, because politics is never really about reality. What politics is about is telling you a story that makes sense of the reality you are living through at the moment. It may be, in a way, a strange fantasy, but it sort of makes sense of what you're living through at the moment.
What do you guys think of this?
Do not make sense of the reality. What they actually do is they make it weirder and worse. That's a bad word. They make it weirder and worse. And that leads to a total disenchantment with politics. And to go back to Russia and the Soviet Union, yes, they were at a very similar stage. They saw a system that everyone knew led them back in weirder and weirder ways. In the films, I try and show how, towards the end of the 80s, President Gorbachev really did believe he could save communism. And he knew it wasn't working. So he thought, okay, we'll have computers. We'll get computers in. And computers will rescue communism because it's the modern way. But I found this interview with this woman who worked for a thing called Gosplan, which was the planning organization that planned everything for everyone in the state. And yeah, they had computers, and the computers predicted to them what people would want. And so the computers predicted that people wanted stacked heels. This was at the end of the 70s, the end of the 80s, which I think is probably a bit late given that it was fashionable in the 70s, I think, in Britain. But anyway, they thought it was going to rescue them because that's what the computer said. But actually, by the time they'd got around to telling the factories how many to produce and how to build a stacked heel, it had gone out of fashion. So whatever they tried didn't work. And it led them into this absurd world, absolutely absurd. And I'm afraid given the events of the last few days, I think we have got into an absurd world where the Liberals are now welcoming the return of the thing they used to hate. George Osborne and austerity. Austerity is, as practiced in this country by people like George Osborne, was extremely one-sided and rather cruel, I think. And that's not a political statement. Is it hit the poor and the weakest of the society much worse than the rich did because of this thing called quantitative easing, which is the most boring term ever in the world. But actually what it was really about was pouring masses of money into what's called the asset class. And the asset class are those who have money and instead of investing in the stock market, started investing in assets. And they grew richer and richer and richer. And we're still there. So what I'm really saying is that yeah, we don't have a story from any politician that actually makes sense of that reality at this moment. And we're sort of waiting for it. And I can't see where it's coming from. I mean, some of the left go, oh, it's going to be fascist populism. I don't see that. I haven't seen that. I don't know where it's coming from, but no one has got it at the moment. No one. Even what's he called? Martin Lewis hasn't got it.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't. He probably able to win an
Yeah, it does
election.
look like Britain, all the post-industrial stuff.
Yeah.
Of millions of people, as the government do things that actually turn the financial system haywire and upside down. I mean, to be honest, I think that the work of political genius and prediction was Stranger Things, or the last episode of it. We are in the upside down world. I mean, we really have gone into it. Everything is like that. You now have the left-wing political class welcoming the return of George Osborne's austerity system. Well, that's the upside down world. And to people like me, just as a voter, I think they don't know what they're doing. And they know that we know that they don't know what they're doing. And also the journalists know that we don't know what we're doing. I mean, sorry, the people know that we journalists have no idea either.
Yeah, there's communal ignorance.
Yes, and communal bewilderment
Yeah.
is the better word, I think.
I agree. So given then there's that similarity, that feedback loop exists throughout history, what lessons are available to us to learn from its previous iteration?
I think the really interesting thing is we're at that point. I mean, it's baffling, but my view is that
Cold Tuesday in Stoke.
The old idea of saying, oh, we can learn lessons from this, we can learn lessons from this, and we must be careful because unless we do this, this will happen. That sort of seems to be going. Do you remember up until actually very recently, there was a lot about in our society and in America about you mustn't do this because if you do this, something terrible will happen, like you'll get an autocracy like Russia, that's spreading, or you're going to get radical Islamism, or if you're not careful, or you're going to get a brutal technocracy like you have in China. Well, actually, if you sort of manage to peer past the bewilderment of our present society and look outside, the war in Ukraine seems to be proving that the autocracy in Russia is extremely weak and fragile and may fall. The revolt in Iran, which I think is even more significant than what's happening in Ukraine, that's not to diminish Ukraine at all, but is really important, shows that radical Islamism, which came up in 1979 at exactly the same time as Mrs. Thatcher, is collapsing. And if you look at China, talk about a weird society. I have a friend in China whose mother lives in a hutong, one of the apartments, right in the centre of Beijing. One person went to a shop who was then found a day later to have COVID. Within 2 hours, 60 ambulances turned up at the hutong, each one for one person from the hutong to be taken off, to be kept in like 2 weeks isolation. It's mad, and it's destroying the country. And also, they have a vast debt overhang. I mean, far bigger than even the financial crash here. So what I'm really saying is that whilst we have no idea of the future, what's becoming increasingly obvious is that all those things that we were warned about, like autocracy, radical Islamism, China, that if we didn't carry on doing what we're doing, that would happen. They're not turning out to be true either, which means that in a way, in a funny kind of optimism, is the way's open now. And I'm just waiting for someone to realize that the way is open.
There we are. So the key phrase that the way is open, and also having no idea about the future. Why do you think we are incapable?
I think Cameron's he was nice, but Cameron is way too lefty. Cameron on Bulwark, he's way to the left of me.
Of imagining, conceiving of an alternative political, social system or reality?
That's a very good question. No one knows. I mean, I think it's partly to do with the fact that it's partly to do with the fact that we live in an age of what you could best describe as radical individualism, and where you are encouraged, and you want it yourself, to do exactly what you feel you want to do as an individual. And
Yeah, dude, he seems like a
and you
tanky.
do believe.
Cameron from Bulwark podcast, he looked like a tanky to me.
As I'm sure you and I do. So what I feel inside me is probably the most important thing. And the idea that you should be told what to do by a religious group, a trade union, a political party, or even the BBC is wrong. It's sort of morally wrong, and it's paternalistic, and it's just wrong.
Yeah, how did Cameron get a gig at Bulwark when he's like seemingly a tanky a bit? I'm a bit confused, but I mean, he was nice to me.
The problem with that is that actually that eats away at the whole idea of mass democratic politics, because the whole original idea of mass democratic politics is that you and I would be informed by journalists of bad things that are happening, and together we would come together and we would put pressure on our lawmakers, the politicians, to do something about it. That involves actually joining together in a group and seeing a common identity and realizing you're then powerful. If you believe that actually what you think and what you feel is the most important thing, and any giving yourself up to something else than that is in a way not immoral but somehow wrong, then that eats away at the idea of a collective power. And in those circumstances, I think people just follow their own desires. I think that was beautiful when this whole age started, probably late 1950s, early 1960s, and people were confident and sort of went into this strange, wonderful dream world of individualism. But increasingly, and I would argue, especially since the crash in 2008, people have felt weaker and weaker, because if you do live in a world in which you just follow your own desires, when things go well, it's really wonderful, it's lovely. And we have lived through, like Lotus Eaters, through that, possibly on a wave of borrowed money, but ignoring whether that's good or bad, it was wonderful. When things go wrong, though, it's quite scary. It's like being in the woods on your own, and it's frightening. You're not with your friends in the woods, because that's exciting. You're on your own in the woods. And what that does is it disempowers you. And when you feel disempowered, when you feel frightened, you cannot imagine anything else than the fear. And I'm not trying to argue that you're made to feel fearful. It's the situation we've all created together of this individualistic experience. When things go wrong, it eats away at our self-confidence. It eats away, which is why I would argue that everyone is obsessed by trauma. I don't know if you watch your TikTok much, but TikTok is absolutely obsessed by personal trauma. It's all about there must be something inside you that's making you feel bad. And that's to go back to your original question, what is stopping us imagining a better world and a better future is this idea that somehow the reason we feel bad is because there's something bad inside us. And that's so disempowering. And to be honest, whilst it may be true in a number of cases, it's also possibly true that the reason you feel bad is because you live in a shitty society. And that's not really talked about anymore. And until you start talking about that, you're not going to get that ability to imagine something new and better and wonderful, which has happened in the past, and I'm sure will happen again. But we've been disempowered partly because we went through that gate into individualism. Individualism, you can't put the genie back in the box, but it does eat away at that confidence.
I haven't seen Starship Troopers. I should watch it. Someone goes, Glorious Muscovy.
It undermines collective action. I mean, well, maybe not a simple example, but the Stop the War March, right? It's like 3 million people in London. And what's the slogan? Not in my name. And you're talking
I should watch Starship
Troopers. One of the big problems with the way we engage with how we feel and whether we're happy in our lives, people don't say, oh, do you have access to good housing? Do you have access to welfare? Do you have a strong, happy home, family life? It's instead, look within yourself, put up the boundaries, cancel your toxic friendships. And actually what that ends up doing is, first of all, it doesn't engage with the structural problems that you're faced with, but it serves to seriously undermine the power of collective action if you were to try and change those structural problems.
Yeah, very well put. No, that's completely true. And that is collective action from whether it be right or left. It just undermines that. And I think it is the really big question of our time is to be brutal, was mass democracy a moment? Or can it be rescued and turned into something noble again? Or is individualism this sort of thing? I mean, one politician said to me, you just can't do it any longer. It's like squealing piglets. They're just going everywhere. You can't assemble. So you don't actually know what is the best policy. This is from the politician's point of view. Is that if you've got a hillside full of squealing piglets going every which way, what policy is going to assemble them? There isn't one. So what Tony Blair did, I think he was really the first one who did this in a big way, was just use focus groups. So you go to focus groups and you ask them what you want. That's fine if people are sort of quite confident. They can say, I want better housing, I want this. But if they're feeling frightened, alone, and as you say, blaming themselves, then focus groups don't work any longer. So what you're faced with is a scared, isolated, lonely group of people who you don't know what policies to offer them. They can't tell you any longer because they're frightened and disempowered. So again, you get this feedback loop. And I'm not even going to do the normal thing, which is what liberals do, is say,
remember when I said like 6 streams ago that the real socialist intellectuals are actually pretty smart? Well, I know one political science professor, but he's actually quite pro-Western. Interesting. Who's you talking about?
Fascism, because I don't think you're going to get that, because that again was mass politics. That involved standing in crowds and giving yourself up.
Yeah, Orwell was a socialist, and Orwell was a smart intellectual. And I've said this before, but I think Perry Anderson of the New Left Review is a really interesting intellectual, one of the best alive today, even though I obviously dislike his Marxist views.
No, individualism is this extraordinary thing that's come out of the box. You can't put it back. And the real key to any politics of the future is going to be a way of somehow allowing people still to feel they are part of something, yet also feel they are individuals who can follow their own desires. I used to think the internet could do it. I had this idea that, and maybe the internet could do it if it was taken away from these groups who have monetized it and simplified it. But I don't know. But I mean, that's the key thing: is how can you allow people to give themselves up to something which they do want to do, but yet not give away that desire to feel that you have the right to do what you want to do.
He told me that in a democracy, it tends to vote for its demagogue when there's a sickness within the nation. The people will never accept that they're wrong. I mean, that's true.
And no one's managed to find a way of doing that, and that's where the politics of the future will come from. I think it's got so mad at the moment that that's going to have to come, but I can't see where it is. I used to think it was going to be nature, but I don't think it is. That's too nostalgic, and I don't think it's culture. That's very nostalgic as well. Have you noticed all these things that surround us that we sort of escape into, like nature, like modern culture? They're incredibly nostalgic. They're not forward-looking, and so. But I still think the gate is open now. I do, I really do.
It's promising. Let's take it back to the collapse of the Soviet Union then. From the embers of communism and then democracy, you get the phoenix, shall we say, of Vladimir Putin rising from the ashes, as well as millions of traumatized Russians. Could you explain first of all how that works and sort of the route from there to now? That's a huge question, I realise. But
No one fully understands. I mean, one of the reasons I stopped these films effectively on New Year's Eve 1999 was that was the moment that Putin comes to power. And I don't think we understand what Putin is. I mean, if you talk to Russian journalists who are anti-Putin, but sensible, they say the thing you in the West don't understand is that Putin did not seek power. He was chosen by a group of what called the oligarchs, who had really taken power in Russia by the end of the 90s and had a drunken President Yeltsin under their thumb. They knew that his time was up, but they were searching for someone who would not prosecute them, would not send them to jail, or even execute them. And they found Putin as...
It's actually funny. I was talking to a conservative from the UK and was saying 2 days ago that I expect most centre-left parties will clamp hard on immigration. They have to if they want to survive. That's where the people want. That's what the people want. Moscow looked a lot nicer back then. Do you really think so? It's interesting. What city is this? This is Moscow. Trump and Farage are the symptoms, not the disease. The disease is a decaying, sick, unfair society in terminal decline. I don't know if it's as bad as that. Do you normally watch stuff at increased speed? Yeah, I do. Maybe it's my ADHD, but I always watch shit on 2.0, basically.
sort of pretty basic functionary within the KGB, what was known as the FSB, used to be the KGB. And they made him president. And what's fascinating is...
Hassan's uncle Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur is, horrible. Terrible guy.
And sort of the route from there to now. That's a huge question, I realise. But
no one fully understands. I mean, one of the reasons I stopped these films, effectively, on New Year's Eve 1999, was that was the moment that Putin comes to power. And I don't think we understand what Putin is. I mean, if you talk to Russian journalists who are anti-Putin, but sensible, they say the thing you in the West don't understand is that Putin did not seek power. He was chosen by a group of what called the oligarchs, who had really taken power in Russia by the end of the 90s and had a drunken President Yeltsin under their thumb. They knew that his time was up, but they were searching for someone who would not prosecute them, would not send them to jail, or even execute them. And they found Putin as a sort of pretty basic functionary within the KGB, what was known as the FSB, used to be the KGB. And they made him president. And what's fascinating is that there are very few moments in human history where those who assume power in giant empires have not sought that power. And Putin, I don't think he was a plant by the KGB, which some people have alleged. He was born out of that. I mean, there's a guy at the end of my films who's called Yevgeny Kiselyov, who was a very, very famous television presenter at that time. And a BBC camera catches him just a moment in the studio, just at the end of 1999, and he turns to you and says, listen, you and us have got to understand, communism collapsed, but also democracy has now collapsed. And in this country, if you call someone a Democrat, you are cursing them. Democracy is now a curse, he says. So what you actually had at that point was a society where no one had any idea of any future. So they just accepted Putin. They didn't know what he meant or what happened. Now, a lot of Russians say, no, he's one of these sort of shape-shifting characters, and he's been through all these shape-shifting things.
Vietran, holy shit, the YouTube censorship is so fucking bad. What do you mean, Vietran? What are you talking about?
I don't fully understand it, because you now have a man who seems to have embarked on some strange, what would you describe it as, sort of post-imperial nostalgia.
The question of whether Putin is sick and riddled with cancer, I don't think anybody knows. He has had a number of public appearances where he's been like trembling and stuff, and it's certainly interesting. We don't, unfortunately, it's impossible to say, really.
Which I think is interesting, is if you go back to the way the West reacted when Putin came to power.
Like, I've heard for 2-3 years that Putin's terminally ill. I've heard that for a long time, and nothing's happened yet.
This general feeling of, at last, we've got a sensible, technocratic guy.
Vietran, why is there censorship in the chat? I don't understand that.
I went to see him and said I can deal with him. George Bush, the president, went to see him, so I can deal with him. And there was this assumption, it's all over now, that chaos is over and it'll all be fine. What I think we're seeing is a vast empire.
How much do you get into the Hitchens brothers? I really like Christopher Hitchens. I really like his style of writing.
Still collapsing. I mean, to go back to the analogy with the British Empire.
I get you, Vietran, I get you.
Analogies I've thought, which, I mean, it's a long time ago, most people have long forgotten it. But in 1956, I think, Britain, desperate to keep its empire going, what it saw as its empire going, invaded Egypt because the president then had actually nationalised the Suez Canal. Britain, the British thought, this is wrong, this is our route to the empire, even though the empire didn't exist any longer. They invaded, and the Americans stopped them. And it is sort of pretty similar, is that really what you're seeing is a giant empire desperately trying to hold onto a strange fantasy of its own. Why he's doing it, no one knows.
He's already older than the life expectancy for Russian males.
Because when he came to power, he wasn't like that. He didn't believe in anything. He was an empty vessel. So the real answer to the question is, I don't think anyone knows. I mean, it's an empire, what it saw as its empire going, invaded Egypt because the president then had actually nationalised the Suez Canal. Britain, the British thought, this is wrong, this is our route to the empire, even though the empire didn't exist any longer. They invaded, and the Americans stopped them. And it is sort of pretty similar, is that really what you're seeing is a giant empire desperately trying to hold onto a strange fantasy of its own. Why he's doing it, no one knows. Because when he came to power, he wasn't like that. He didn't believe in anything. He was an empty vessel. So the real answer to the question is, I don't think anyone knows. I mean, it's another of these areas where we just don't know. No one's claiming to be Putin. And what was extremely clever about Putin is that up until before the Ukraine invasion, he would let the West say anything about him. Did you notice this? The liberals in America went into this extraordinary strange dream world of trying to say that, in fact, it was collusion between him and Donald Trump that had given you Donald Trump, without actually anyone producing any real evidence. No one's ever produced it. It was a strange, weird dream fantasy of the liberals, and Putin let them do it because it gave the West, and I suppose people in Russia, an image of him as a man in a cave stroking a white cat and being in charge of everything. But if you talk to any Russian journalist who knows what's going on in Moscow, they say, no, look, there are so many different power groups in Moscow. What Putin's really trying to do is stop them all killing each other. And it's a very, very fragile system. And the idea that he could actually create for you the American president, they just think is ridiculous. But again, we fell into it. So we go into the stream world, which Putin
Succession's a good show. I've only watched the first couple episodes.
allows us to do. And I don't think anyone understands.
What about Peter Hitchens? His interview with Owen Jones was good. Crushed his naive optimism about the future. I should watch that interview. I do think Peter Hitchens is interesting.
And I think that's
I like Christopher better than Peter, but they're both interesting brothers.
the problem of our time, of this war, is no one really gets why.
I guess you just tell yourself about Trump and Putin's collusion as opposed to perhaps that the electorate pressed that big button you were talking about.
No, I think that's true. I think one of the most difficult things for liberals in this country and in America to face is the fact
Do you all think they picked an American pope because American hegemony is no longer too powerful? I don't think it's that.
that they make
See, I'm more left on economic issues. But I still ultimately favor capitalism and free markets, but I do favor more government and intervention in the economy.
They have been partly responsible for Brexit and for Trump because they allowed a very corroding and possibly corrupt system to persist because they were doing quite well at it. They weren't corrupt themselves, but they were the beneficiaries of what was effectively an increasingly corrupted system. The thing I was talking about earlier on, quantitative easing, it's a completely benign phrase, seemingly benign phrase, but actually you could argue that it was as big a looting of the system as what the oligarchs did in Russia. It would never be categorized as that, and you could never accuse the people involved of being criminals, but it was a...
That's a very interesting point by Adam Curtis, talking about quantitative easing in the same way that we talk about the looting of Russia in the 90s. But of course, there was a lot of looting of physical plant in Russia in the 90s. It's a bit different. It's like mixed market social democracy. Yeah, look, on economics, I'm a mixed market type of guy, social democracy.
A vast shift of wealth away from the majority of people towards a small minority, which I think sort of partly helped give you Brexit.
Yeah, I guess in the same way, the first couple of oligarchs, the way they enriched themselves, wasn't actually necessarily illegal. It was understanding, quirks in the system, how to speculate non-cash into real cash.
This is actually one of the things I want to try and explain gently in these films, is that they weren't these sort of super criminals. I mean, some of them did some criminal things, but that was later. Early on, they were very intelligent, clever children of the Soviet system, of the establishment, who spotted that as this system was collapsing, it was becoming not only absurd.
Max, if America goes down, the whole world is going to have a massive economic recession.
But a strange logic was coming into play, which meant that you could actually siphon some money out of it out of nothing. And they just thought, oh, this is clever. Well, there is an argument that in this country, as the economic system became weirder and weirder, especially after the crash of 2008, sort of clever people here worked out how to do that as well. It wasn't illegal at all. But what you saw is the vast transfer of wealth into the hands of a small minority. And that's why all around us in London, you see these extraordinary apartment blocks going up. Just the amount of wealth in London, yet there is extreme poverty. And you don't have to adopt any political position in order to notice that, because no one has really explained, to go back to the original question, no one's actually come up with...
Any young Australian politicians or commentators you reckon would be interesting to interview, especially Brisbane-based ones? I'm not sure. Interesting right-wing figure, maybe Jordan Knight, if you wanted to interview him. I'm not sure if he's based in prison right now, though.
A story that explains why all this is happening. No politician has done it, right or left. And they're all floundering around. And that's where we are.
I wonder if Gordon Brown ever sat in his office, Yeltsin-like, with his bodyguard, looking at a wall, saying that, let's deal in England. Let's go back then to so communism collapses, democracy collapses, and you end up in this sort of autocratic-ish Putin brainchild society, which perhaps you would describe as dystopian. Do you think, well, maybe not then, but do you think dystopia is perhaps more appealing or easier to accept or understand by people that live within these systems than imagining a utopia that they could progress towards?
Well, I think there are two things to that. One is that if you are on your own in a system... No, what Putin did early on was he flooded Russia with money because the oil price went up massively and he benefited from that. But to answer your question about dystopias, it is one of the very interesting questions of our time, is why is everything dystopian at the moment in our culture? And why do we sort of fetishize it? Are we actually trying to make ourselves feel better somehow? I mean, I made a short film for Charlie Brooker once where I did it in a silly way, but I do think it's sort of the thing of our time, is that if you don't believe in anything any longer, which I sort of think the class that I come out of possibly doesn't any longer. This terrible, dirty, dark secret is that maybe we really don't believe in anything any longer. We're frightened of everything happening.
You should interview Gerard Rennick. I actually would. You know what? I actually would.
We're frightened of what might happen to the planet. We're frightened of what might happen.
Adam Curtis has a whole new series on the USSR. No, so this thing we're watching now, the footage comes from that documentary, Trauma Zone. It's a really good series of documentaries. I really recommend it to people.
This economic system. Our only response is what I call Odierism. Is that
I support capitalism if it's regulated. Too much capitalism leads to crony capitalism, which leads to a kleptocracy. Yeah, no, absolutely, Yusuf. I agree with you there.
You look at the newspaper in the morning and you see terrible things happening, and your only response is...
Yeah, dude, super base. Trauma Zone is really good by Adam Curtis. This interview comes from his promotions of Trauma Zone, and Hypernormalization is a really good documentary too.
Oh dear. And I think that's sad. And I'm still not quite sure what's happening. I think the climate change movement is a very interesting example, is that you are facing a really serious problem, but instead of actually linking it to the feelings of people who are weak and disempowered at the moment and saying, look, together we can solve this, and not only solve the problems of the planet, but also actually make a better world now. What has captured the climate change movement is a sort of technocratic view, which is, no, all we got to do is make sure the system clicks back to stability, which I would argue is exactly the same as what you're hearing today from the newspaper, saying, at last Liz Truss has gone, now we can go back to stability, ignoring the fact that it's going to carry on a system of growing inequality. And that's the argument you would say about the climate change movement, is that none of the people who captured the climate change movement from about 1992 onwards ever really confronted the fact that maybe it was the actual kind of society you have that is creating the climate change problem, and that therefore you're actually going to have to deal with the climate change problem, you're going to have to change the society. They would not confront this. What they kept on saying was, no, we just have to reset the system back to when they used to argue about how many degrees you're in all that. And it's only until very, very, very recently with things like the school strike movement that you actually began to get people saying, no, we've got to change society. We've got to. And of course, the next step, if you're a good, optimistic politician, is to say, well, no, actually, we could actually save the planet and we could build a better society. And you might take people with you then. But that's not happening. Have you noticed this?
I have.
The climate change movement actually keeps on trying to tell you you're going to die. And whilst, of course, you're facing a really serious danger, I would argue that's not really the way you're going to actually succeed.
Yeah, Derek makes a good point. Emissions have been dropping in the West. So this is a bit over the top.
And building a better world. And actually, the clever thing to do would be to say, look, as well as actually saving the planet, we can actually deal with the very issues that make you angry, alone, unhappy, and bewildered now by, reindustrializing in a completely powerful way, or something like that. It's making something really exciting.
If you combine the impotence of that Odierism.
Is the US headed towards a Putin-style Trump dictatorship? I don't think he can consolidate enough power to do that. I still don't think he's got enough power to do that. Drew, you watched Mr. Robot? I haven't.
With or maybe not combines, but it undermines the alleged sort of ultimate freedom that we've secured via individualism. It kind of is the counterweight to that. It's that instead of actually doing anything about the problems you face, you just sit there and go.
Yeah, oh dear. And I do think this is, I don't know, I think some clever person is going to have to find a way to say to the powerful mid-range elites in our society, look, you're being a bit, what's the polite word? You are partly responsible for the failure of these things. And and I know you don't like what's happening, but you've got to do something about it. I mean, I did notice the thing that really shocked me after Brexit and also Trump in America is that the people who hated Brexit and the people who hated Trump did absolutely nothing to go and talk to the people who voted for Brexit and voted for Trump and say to them, yes, actually, I see why you did it, but you were conned by the people who led Brexit and you were conned by the people around Trump and you're being used. But actually, I see why you did it. Very, very, very few people did that. Instead, they retreated, as you were saying, into fantasies about how really it was Putin that gave you. Well, in fact, actually, they had fantasies that it was Putin that gave you Brexit, as far as I remember. No one went out and said to the people who voted, they said, no, I do understand why you did it. I mean, of course, there are strange, really weird retired colonels in Surrey and nasty racists down in, I don't know, the Dartford marshes who probably did vote.
Lurking.
Exactly. But I do think there was a substantial majority who did it because they were offered for the first time for a long time a way of expressing their anger and revolt against a system that made them feel disempowered, frightened, weak, and poor.
Do you think that's what's been lost in all of this? The people that inhabit the capitalist, it doesn't matter capitalist, communist, whatever system it is they inhabit.
Yeah, it's a sense of empathy for what other people are going through, and politics has lost that. Whether you can argue that possibly that comes from individualism, and that it's an individualism that has gone sour and become corrupted and can be recaptured, but there is a sense of a lack of sympathy and understanding for other people in our political system at the moment. I don't quite understand why.
And that could be construed as quite a upsetting, miserable place to leave it, but there's no need for us to be overly pessimistic about the future, is there?
No, I'm not. In a funny way, even though we are living in this strange time of chaos and uncertainty and no one quite knows what's going to happen tomorrow, I've got this funny optimism sitting in me because it's almost like if you take Liz Truss, she's crashed the car, we survived, we're now opening the door, we're walking out, but all those things that used to be in a way a block against trying to say, oh no, we could try it a different way. Autocracy in Russia is collapsing. Radical Islamism in Iran is collapsing. That sort of super hyper technocracy where you go to live in a surveillance state that China represents, that also seems to be collapsing with their vast debt problem. There aren't those blocks that say, oh no, you can't go that way, you can't because that'll happen or that'll happen. So in a way, the way is now open. And what I'm waiting for is for someone to realize that, because I suspect that all people want is to be able to say, no, okay, none of this seems to work. What could work? What could inspire us? And all you need is someone to actually take that and run with it. And I think maybe we have got past peak dystopia. I really do think so. It's almost like that at that very moment, everything seems to be crumbling. Maybe something light might come through in the cracks. I just sort of instinctively feel that.
We'll find the aspiration and optimism in the systems we already have, or slim parts of it anyway. Adam Curtis, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Trauma Zone is on our play now.
Really, honestly, Adam Curtis is genius. I think he is one of the best thinkers on politics today in the world. He's probably one of my favorite. He's an intellectual. He's one of my favorite intellectuals. Guys, I might call it a day today because it's 10:38 and I gotta start preparing for tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. We had about 3,000 views on Twitter. We've had average of about 30 views an hour on YouTube, which is good. About 75 watch hours. So I appreciate you guys for sticking around. It's cool. I like seeing the same people popping in every day. It's cool. I feel like we've got a little tiny community growing. It's good. And yeah, guys, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. I've been doing it every day and I'll keep on doing it 30 days in. It's going good. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Cool to see you again. I remember you from the Canadian streams. That was really cool. I want to say thanks, Max, as well. Max, I'll have you on the show maybe next week or something like that. I'll start doing some call-ins. It'd be interesting. Good to see you to Superbase as well, and Yusuf as well, and Con, Derek, Vietran. Just trying to make sure I don't forget people. Pickles LeBlanc. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And Mr. F as well. Mr. F, I appreciated your comments yesterday when I was debating. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Cool. See you guys.